in my office, but my iPad's been at home, so I've been like, it's kind of automated. We're good. Because someone like. I mean, that's the interesting.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call this council work session to order. Wednesday, June 7th, the time is 2 p.m. Councilor Sundin is with us on via Zoom. Now it's time for visitor comments. Visitor comments is a period of simple possible government business. Has 3 minutes to speak. City Council will take all into consideration. However, in agreements of Oregon open meeting laws, there isn't a time for dialogue, but rather a time to listen to you. Our city administrator is the recorder, are taking notes of action if needed. And go ahead and open it up and come on up, state your name for the record and keep to 3 minutes or less.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're all well. I've come to speak about the code of conduct that you have.
Get your name for the record.
Well, my name is Scott James. I'm a resident of St. Helens. I'm also on the Parks and Trails Commission. I'm not speaking to them. I'm speaking just in my role as that. I'm asking for you to delay the vote for this that you might be taking this evening until next month, your second session next month, so we can have a chance to deliberate on the code of conduct. I'm not sure about this iteration of it, but the original iteration, I had a couple of concerns. The first one was that about the ability to direct staff to gather information, direct staff. My issue is that it might impact the ability to gather information, asking the staff if I could, get the information to be able to advise you guys on the best role going forward on whatever issue it is. My second one is that this body's ability to dismiss members at their discretion, make it dismissal there. I think there should be a well-defined procedure. And I'm just happy to give us a chance to advise you on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, other visitor comments? Oh, go ahead.
Sure.
Sorry.
My name is Angela Wayman, and I'm here to see if you guys would respond to the spirit of Christmas of Mill County. It's the Christmas parade that comes together. We do our reverse through the neighborhood. We do St. Helens, we do Scappoose, and we pick up food donations from everyone that's outside of their home. Last year they charged me $100 and then a $450 deposit for the parade. I was saying if you guys would either help or sponsor with other sponsors from them.
So we go to the evening session on stuff like this, but I'm writing it down for discussion, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. So the
You state your name for the record.
Brady Brand. The first thing I wanted to mention is which was not really my first topic, but it will be, is the ethics proposed code of conduct. I actually think it's a good idea, and it's sort of following up on the code of conduct. I think that you should remove Steve Kosky from the planning commission. To me, if he doesn't get removed, it's like, why do you have a code? Why do you have it? I mean, he had it, there was a code prior. This one obviously strengthens some of the abilities and makes it more clear about how to remove people. But to me, you have a letter I saw online from residents where they thought they were deceived about the meeting that he had. And I think that if you don't remove him, like, who would you remove? And so I do think that that's within their ability and their power, and I think that you should do that, and I think that it affects this the time. I mean, even before this whole issue about HB 3115, he was, I think, a poor member of that committee, monopolizing the time. He got worse as chair, and to me, it's like, that should get removed. The other question I had, the other statement I wanted to make was the police and their patrolling the 13 nights. I think that they need to be there. I know last Friday, we had this discussion on the radio. Bill Eagle called in and had some pretty negative things to say about our police chief. And somebody told me, like, if you lost Bill Eagle, you lost, wasn't me saying it, it was Bill Eagle, and it's like, you know, talking about him specifically not being a member of this community. And because of that, feeling that that's a reason why those police are not being part of our organization downtown, so they're not here. And I think that he had a good point, and I think that the police need to be downtown, and I think they further sort of the union also, you know, normally people support police. The union sort of is pitting, and I realize it's a hard situation for them as far as budget cuts, but I didn't like their comments about the mystery vote and sort of dispelling this rumor about trying to act like it's a choice of the police or the vote when it wasn't, when it was paid for. And I think the police have done a poor job there too, but I also think that you need to have a police presence at 13 nights. I know there are changes coming that will help. I think that with the wristbands, but I do think that there should be some police there, and I think that you should request your police chief to provide that. Thank you.
Here. Brought a couple extra people because I think I might need a little extra time. Not much though. That's fine. I have prepared comments, so. A person who is.
I'm Megan Ryan.
Yes, yes.
I'm Robin Toski.
Stephen Toski,
And Megan Ryan.
citizen, St. Helens, all three. A person who is poor and struggling to survive is entitled under the law to have a place to shelter and keep warm and dry for their survival. Forcing them to relocate every 24 hours, rain or shine, snow or cold, even though they are already in a place where they are allowed to shelter, is not reasonable from anyone's perspective, let alone objectively reasonable from the perspective of homeless. On April 11, 2023, the Planning Commission held a hearing wherein the subject of whether requiring someone to relocate every 24 hours was objectively reasonable from the perspective of the houseless person, which is the legal standard under the law. There was 1 week's notice sent to all of the planners and the planning commissioners that the question would be asked, that they are required to articulate why it would be objectively reasonable to have a person relocate every 24 hours. Public comment was invited. No one at the hearing thought that the requirement to relocate every 24 hours was objectively reasonable. That includes Chief Planner Jacob Gratian, Jenny Dimshow, none of the 7 planning commissioners, no one in the audience, and no one on Zoom. I stated for the record at that time, I thought it was not reasonable. Jenny Carlson gave an example of someone trying to stay warm and dry and having to move their wet tent and get everything wet to, quote, relocate, end quote. That could not help their survival. Quote an audience member, moving every 24 hours is about power and control. That's the benefit, that rule. It's about the government saying that we are in charge. The government is telling you to move. I don't care if it's convenient. Mr. Chairman, the reason that you are not getting pushback in this room is because we are in agreement. There has been a cultural shift. Everyone in this room sees that we cannot approach this issue like we did in 1949. I think that the 24-hour rule is a holdover from move along now. I think you have agreement here that it is not humane. When the city gets sued, and it will be sued, we will have absolutely no chance of winning on this 24-hour relocate requirement. Courts make decisions on evidence. They don't make decisions that, oh, we took the advice of our counsel. The planning commission hearing will be played and the transcript will be prepared. The jury and the court will consider it. Jacob Greichen, every planning commissioner, will be called as a witness, and they will testify in court that they thought the rule to be inhumane. We will lose our case and we will deserve to lose. And the consequences of losing. Court will first look at that the city had no reason at all for going against the findings of the planning commission and will likely, as in the Grants Pass case, issue a preliminary injunction, suspending our laws for years while the case is decided. That's what happened to Grants Pass. Mr. Heisel's client, Aaron Heisel, I might add, that Grants Pass lost complete control of its parks, including Riverside Park, one of the most beautiful city parks right by the river. Here is a May 18, 2023 article from Grants Pass about closing Riverside Park for a month due to a recent murder. The city explained, quote, the city explained while the recent homicide was an extreme example of the threat to public safety, it's not the only issue police have been dealing with. Quote, they have responded to incidents of harassment, theft, criminal damage, and vandalism, drug deals, disorderly conduct, overdoses, assaults, rape, propane tank explosions, unlawful use of weapons, shootings, and now homicide, the city said. This is why, as a citizen and as a planning commissioner, I've been so vocal about St. Helens getting this right. If the city moves forward with the 24-hour move along law, I fear for the safety of our children, our women, and all of our people. Rape, propane tank explosions, shootings. That's what happens when the government loses control of property due to court injunctions. Patrick, I said from the very beginning when you were the planning commission advisor, this issue was about protecting our very way of life. And today is the day that the city can move forward and do that, or we can fall short. So the city rule is 90% there, according to Jacob's presentation, but it needs to change the 24-hour rule to 5 days, which is plenty of time to rest, sleep, keep warm and dry, and find services. In doing so, frankly, I think we will be nearly invulnerable and bulletproof from suit. We will have complied with state law and implemented a humane policy. It's like a boat. You can build a boat, but if you leave the plug out, it will sink. This brings me to subject number 2, the gag order ethics law and the planning commission changes suggested by the statute. Where did that 24-hour rule come from? That's what I was asked. The one that was suggestions now, I guess, part of the final version. Well, Mr. Heisel, an attorney who was hired by our insurance company, pulled it out of thin air. John Walsh simply wanted to go with it. John said, I want to go with the flow and see what others are doing. John, you're far too passive of a city manager, and your attitude and leadership on this issue has placed all of our citizens in grave danger. You are afraid of ideas, afraid of accountability, and you have tried the best you can to suppress thought and to suppress expression of the truth on this issue, and you have dangerous got us close for a problem. I think that in some respects, Mayor Scholl is a victim of that poor leadership. And Mayor Scholl, I know you have your mind open, fight everything. You still have a chance to show the leadership that we all depend on you, and you too, Councilor President Chilton. We owe no duty to pass a lousy law to help our neighboring cities, and unfortunately did not have the great legal counsel and minds of the St. Helens City Planning Commission in order to help it develop the laws. I said what brought me to the Planning Commission was fate, and fate has brought me here from my beloved city at the hour where we either move forward or we fail. I went to the newspaper because it was clear to me that the public needed to be aware of this issue. And for that, the planning commission and the people have been threatened with a censorship law. And a law now to say that the planning commission must obey the city council. I said I would bring transparency and accountability to our government, and staff said they will never let you do it. My sole goal was to protect our children, our women, our lands from being destroyed, our people, by a poorly conceived plan by an attorney who already has failed one city. I have been defamed and I have been shamed. We already have an ethics code that all public officials agree to, and it's plenty. The city is trying to pass a law that just by falsely accusing someone, you can remove a person. What harassment? If a person is seen around the wrong people, that can be a charge for a write-up. And I say this today, because today is the day I say, thank God for the planning commission taking up this HB 315 issue and bringing the truth forward. City would have been truly lost without it. The only opposition that has been from ego and feeling like their power has been affected. I say that we do not suppress the truth. I say we do not suppress ideas. I say we do not make people fear retaliation for trying to help the city move in the right direction, even if that direction is different than what the city has initially considered. I say we reject the gag order bogus ethics law and keep a strong and independent planning commission. You need it. Reject these two laws and don't be bullied and don't be afraid. Thank you.
Well, yeah, you can't double dip, Scott, I'm sorry.
I didn't reserve my time, but I still have time left.
That's not how this works. State your name for the record and keep it to 3 minutes or less, please.
Stephen Topaz, I have two things I'm gonna bring up. The first thing is Rick Stoll, in the beginning of the meeting, describes the 3-minute rule and the fact that the minutes and the information will be kept by Kathy Payne and Don Walsh. On April 19th, I gave some information having to do with a number of things. And I handed the copy of that, which is this, to Kathy Payne. And the minutes that are going to be okay today are, this is Freeheim's and Topaz's message that got to the record. So the words that information is being kept and passed out to the council is not correct. Now, the second thing, I have some questions as usual. When is the city going to have a town meeting to inform the public about turning the cooling lagoon into a contaminated waste dump? When is the city administrator going to ask? When is the city not going to say the contaminated material is clean? When is the city administration not going to say lagoon has excess capacity? The cooling capacity is related to the paper mill's production. The sewage capacity is yet another thing and uses the cooling water of the lagoon only as a diluent. Dumping our treated sewage into the river without diluting it is not permitted. When is the city going to make public the minutes of the illegal executive meeting held in the office of Mo Forster in 2019 in Portland? When is the city going to make public the minutes of the illegal executive meeting held in 22 in St. Helens council chambers discussing with a vendor about operating a contaminated waste dump here in St. Helens? When is the city council and administrator going to ask if the citizens of St. Helens want a contaminated waste dump here in St. Helens? When is the city going to make public the Mobile Forest report on the geologic conditions of the cooling lagoon? Both reports, phase 1B environmental investigative work plan. There's a second one that's come out with the original plan required 49 test bores within the lagoon and none are being done. And the attachments of 202300324. And that has to do with, I'll go back to when's the city going to make public the DEQ, Boise mediation requirements on the in-water contaminated areas of the White Paper Mill. And that report is 14-ROD, Boise Mills site and attachments -2023024. When does the city expect to see the DEQ requirements for rendition of the on-land contaminated areas of the White Paper Mill? How can the city plan to sell sites in the industrial development, not knowing what areas are contaminated? The contaminated is found in the waterfront site. Is the framework plan still viable? Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Do we have any on Zoom?
Give me the name of the book.
Tina Curry, tourism. I've got some other things for tonight, but I just want you to mull over for this period of time until later so that we have enough time to get this potentially out. And I'm thinking that because we don't have tailgating down here and we don't really have parking down here, I would like to put a road closure sign on South First and St. Helens, and then on the 4th Street going up, so that people don't think that they can go over Cowlitz to come down, and then all that's gonna happen is they're gonna turn around and have to drive back up there. It's just gonna create a lot of congestion for these people that don't probably
Very
need it.
good idea, because
Okay.
we'll be right in the midst of construction. on
Yeah.
that one.
So then the residents will actually probably have a place to park. If they get here and they park during the day, they'll probably be able to stay there. Their guests might have to walk in like other people do, but we're gonna have a lot of congestion if we just leave this open. I just know it's just gonna be like this all day long, which just creates frustration, anxiety, and tension. One happy day.
You put out this little, that we would love to have tailgating, but we can't because, of course, construction for the next
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yeah.
Be patient.
Yeah, Crystal's gonna put out an announcement, but I didn't wanna leave it to tonight and then make it go to the next meeting, cause then it's like the messaging is very short when we can start broadcasting now.
Everybody okay with that road closure? Counselor Sundin still on?
Yep.
It makes sense. Let's just, yeah.
Well, we would have CERT working with us too, so if it's a resident, obviously they'll be able to say, I'm a resident.
Okay. Thank you, Tina.
Yeah.
Good work. Can't wait to see that boat on the water. Other visitor comments? All right. We'll do our first item, which is review a request from Hudson Garbage to increase garbage recycling rates. City Administrator John Walsh. Nice to see we have a couple of people here from Hudson Garbage, probably need some questions if needed.
You guys want to come up? Very good. Sure. So I think the council and everybody knows that we have Hudson Garbage Service in town. We have a franchise agreement. Part of that franchise agreement says rates increase. And when you read the franchise agreement, it's tied to an index and reports in your package with the little, I'm not memory here, but it was the total CPI increase, I think it was about 8.2%. There's transfer fees, expenses have gone up considerably, and you're asking for about six and a half, not about, you're asking for a 6.5% increase in. You're committed to that in the franchise.
And how much of an increase? I mean, it's not much. When I was looking it over, I didn't think it was significant.
Yeah.
40 cents a can.
Yeah, so, I think one thing, and thank you, Mr. Walsh, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having us today. The last 3 years have been difficult for everybody, and I think all of our lives have been impacted by inflation, as has most businesses, so. To your point, this year, or I guess speaking from 2022, that CPI number was over that 8% mark at the end of 2022. We realized the last couple of years, we came in with some outsized bigger requests because of inflation. So our goal this year was to try to positive, looking forward positively, hoping that the economy is going to improve. So this year we didn't feel compelled to come back and hit the citizens again with that full CPI number, with anticipation the economy is going to improve. So we're asking for the 6.5%. On all services in the city of St. Helens, which is consistent, throughout the county. One kind of thing to point out, the county does control the tip fee at the transfer station where we dispose of all the solid waste. So they are raising their rate 5.1% July 1st as well. So as you guys know, that's a big component of our P&L and the rate to dispose of the solid waste. So, again, our hope would be that the economy improves. We have had struggles in 2022 with staffing and, labor increases in Portland and Longview markets that we've had to compete with, but slowly seeing some improvement on the labor market. So we're hopeful that that's going to improve. So, but that did result in some significant increases to our employee wages, as well as continued price challenges with a lot of our vendors and trucks being delayed, not being able to find parts. Some of that fun stuff that I think all of us are dealing with and the community. So with that, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know we're on the agenda this evening as well, but I'm open to questions and concerns if you have them. So
That'll be my only thing for council. If you have any questions, because it'll be open for public comment later. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, do you have that?
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment, which is, I know it's hard to raise rates. And so you're always gonna get a little bit back, but I think that you guys are a wonderful business. You guys washed our Avamere bus for us, and the residents were super grateful for that. And so I think that the citizens of St. Helens really value you guys and understand that things cost more. And you guys are not trying to get rich off of everyone, I understand that.
yeah, I appreciate those comments. That was a great thing that Con let me know the team did. And that was actually an idea from one of the drivers that brought it to us and did that. So
These are great community partners.
yeah, and we will continue that. We pride ourselves in being part of the community and have been for many years. I appreciate the relationship we've always had with the city. So.
I think John Walsh is getting ready.
No, I just need to add that a fact. There was a thread in the last 2 weeks that went out on a city manager's lister about garbage rates around the state and how much cities are, I don't know how we stack up against other communities. And many communities are at that. There was nobody less than 6.5%. There was either the CPI, the full 8% up to like 10.5%. So we appreciate you're willing to be there. It's sometimes with rates and inflation and everything.
Hoping that next year is much better for all of us.
Well, also appreciate the service you provided me here 31 years ago. And for a time we tried hauling our own in for a bit. And we're glad you do it. And and also we were in New York for one of the pickups, and our neighbor who we had arranged to I put the cans out in a nice spot that they could easily take them to the street. And they forgot the pickup. So anyway, my wife called the office, and the office said, yeah, no problem. Put it out, we'll get it on an off week and things like that. So appreciate that level of service and flexibility.
I've had that experience as well. Thank you.
I have two teenagers fault for crash out, so, but.
Usually some involved. We hear that often.
We appreciate Hudson Garbage here very much and that and all they do in our community, that for sure, like those little unknown stuff that people don't know about, helping us out with our various, citizens day park as well. So, yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
We will see you this evening.
Yes. Okay, the next item, discussion for the selection of construction manager, general contractor, PMs, ECE services from new public safety. John Walsh and Chief Greenway and
There's, yeah,
David Litz
there might be some other on the call there.
on the Zoom.
I'll take the lead on it. I'm in there. So after the solicitation for it's called a construction manager, general contractor, and we did, what that is somebody that comes and works with the design team, the construction team, work together, try to be more efficient. There's a guaranteed maximum price that we develop, they won't exceed, because they come to council. And we had an initial pre-application meeting, required pre-application meeting with 20 qualified or 25 or 20 contractors come and visit the site, and most of them are really well qualified. We got 10 responses back, which was amazing. And of those, probably any one of them could probably do the job pretty well. So we did interviews we scored those, ranked those between a group of architects, the design team. Councilor Sundin was invited to the process. Came up with top 3, which were Howard S. Wright, Skanska, yeah, and come in a second. Anyway, obviously they didn't get picked. They weren't numbered. But they were all very well qualified. So it got pretty close between Skanska and Howard S. Wright, and Howard S. Wright we offered a little bit more for the city. And we're recommending that the council go with that.
A couple key points on the interviews, like John said, all well qualified could do it, but looking for somebody who would use local subcontractors so we can, keep business in the area. Now, obviously, that's going to depend on what's available and everything, but just to have that vision to use, I think they all 3 understood that. And also the community engagement part, because this is a community, if I'm correct, this is going to be one of the biggest things the community's had in a long time, and everybody, all the eyes in St. Helens are upon this project. So they understand the community engagement piece and really are going to be able to do that. We even discussed things like maybe possibly putting up a time-lapse camera for our community to see how it goes, to be involved. So it was really promising. The interview, very professional. They understood the dynamics of our community and understand that John asked tough questions that, treat this money as your own. And they understand that concept, and look, this is it. There's no going over. This is all we have to work with, and this is our expectation moving into it. So, and we're looking at this from a team concept, not a construction company in the city. We're going to be the teamwork meetings frequently to update us so we can update our community as we go along. So very promising, looking forward to get this project out of the ground. With the smallest footprint too, they also understand the dynamics of that intersection where that's, the station's going, and the possible impact for Cascades, the possible impact for just traffic. And so looking forward to it. And they have a good track record. They've built other police stations, public safety facilities around Oregon with no complaint. One of the areas that concerns me is after the warranties all go away, what do you do in 18 months? And something breaks, and they were spot on. Their name is attached to this project, so they will be there making it right. And it's not about, you have to call this subcontractor. That's about, we will make it right, come back and do our due diligence as we should. They don't want that to happen, but occasionally stuff happens, so again, very promising, very, looking forward to it. So.
Do they have a good pulse on the floodplain issue? I know
Yes.
that is an ongoing concern for citizens with that spot, so I just want to make sure for the record that they've talked about it and it's in considerations.
Absolutely do.
We're actually exceeding it.
Okay.
Like 500 year floods.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure that was noted in there.
That was actually a question during the interview process, so.
And David was is the, that we hired to facilitate, right?
Correct.
And is David on Zoom?
No.
Okay, but I was very, very impressed with, when I came into a meeting, Chief and John and David were having about cutting the costs on this. I'm thinking one layer of brick out, maybe a foot, which didn't look right, and then maybe just one brick out, and the cost saving on one brick around the whole entire face of the building was. That was just amazing with the engineers, yeah,
How they can price model all that.
yeah, to get it down to that 12.6. So, yes, good job,
So it's also for some reference there, there's some materials, building material, mock-ups there. Those are the materials for the facility that,
Facing the outside.
yeah, it would be a brick facade. Let's see what's there.
Right. Okay,
So is that an action item for tonight then?
okay, our next item on our agenda is review final proposal ordinance House Bill 3115, Jacob Gretchen.
Thank you.
Yep.
So ordinance 3296, that is on your agenda for tonight. It is the now famous House Bill 3115 ordinance. This is for its first reading. It is an emergency ordinance. What that does is on the second reading on June 21st, assuming you do the first reading tonight, it would take effect immediately. And that's important in this case because this Oregon House Bill requires cities to have their laws in proper place by July 1st and simply no time left. So we are at the midnight hour on this matter. So I wanted to explain what's going on so you have a little bit more information for tonight. Just a quick overview and Kathy, not immediately, but if you can put the text slides up. So we've talked about this a lot over the last many months, but I just want to do a quick overview for people who aren't aware of this, people watching live or the recording, and just to refresh your memory. So Oregon House Bill 3115, also known as Oregon Revised Statute 195-530. What that says is we cannot say no to camping, sleeping, and lying on public property. Currently, that's what our code says. Just can't do that on public property. So that says, no, can't do that anymore. And it's also related to some decisions in the Ninth Circuit Court. We'll talk about that significance just a little bit. So we need some sort of allowance for camping, etc., on public property, and we need that to be in our code by July 1st, like I mentioned. And some of the interesting provisions that the rules must be objectionably reasonable from the perspective of a homeless person. You know, there's a lot of challenge because there's a natural inclination to play defense. We see a lot of stories in the news, but the law requires us to think from an objectionable standpoint of a homeless person. Something unique to Oregon, not applicable to necessarily other states in the 9th district, is there's lawsuit provision. So if a homeless person feels like the rules are not objectionably reasonable, there is a method for them to file suit against the municipality and all the fun that can happen from that. The other challenge is this is new. There's no rule model code, and what this means and how every community tackles this, it's going to be different from every community. And we've been chewing on this for a good 9 months or so. Well, we started this process last year. And if we look at our own camping ordinances, you know, we changed it several years ago, and I'm not aware of a change before that from when I got hired, and I've been here almost 16 years now. It hasn't really been a problem. There was a little bit of something, I think it was 2015, but don't take my word for it. But some cities, like Seaside, for example, that have more acute problem, they've had to change their code many times over. That's important. You know, we have this deadline to meet, and we anticipate this issue evolving. And in many respects, we're in this experiment. So I talked about the Ninth Circuit Court. And that includes all the western states, as east as Montana and Arizona, I believe. But, you know, California, Washington, Alaska, we're all in there. And there was some rulings there about homeless and camping on public property that affects us. And the reason I refer it to as an experiment, I heard other people refer it to that, but the reason for that is just a new arena of law. And if we compare this to something like search and seizure law, which has been around for decades, and so there's decades of case law for attorneys and other legal analysts to observe, all right, well, how does this all play out? We're on the eve of a whole new dynamic. And so what's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years? I don't know. Will we have to change our laws in response to things happening here and or things happening outside our boundary? I think it's certainly plausible. And so I know there's a lot of emotion on this type of thing, but the fact is we're at the midnight hour, we have to adopt something. And there's kind of an unknown future out there. Some of my own observations, I think currently, and for many years, perhaps forever, a lot of the unsheltered population has been on private land more than public. And these laws don't necessarily impact that. They don't force us to look at private land. And I think about some of the developments have occurred, which were longtime open spaces. Violet's Villa, the old manufactured home park in the middle of town. Now it's grocery outlet, Popeyes, Legacy, and a bunch of apartments. But when they first started clearing that, I remember hearing word of people who were kind of living in that open space. Same thing. For what's known as the Greystone Estates subdivision. That's that residential subdivision by the DMV, same story. And so, you know, over the years, as these private spaces develop and there's less of them, you know, this may become an elevated issue. So anyways, it's a dynamic situation. So we're at one little speck in time, and it's a dynamic situation that we anticipate. We have to face it because we're a city. So some of these slides. So we're going to talk about this version discussed. I want to talk about the history of us discussing this a little bit. Like I said, we first started chewing on it last year, and really 2022 was largely fact-finding, educating, figuring out what the heck is this? What the heck are we dealing with? So then we could figure out which way do we go. And I remember looking through my notes and my own memory banks, December and January, there was a lot of different visions, and in my perspective as staff, it seemed very chaotic. There's a lot of ideas, it was just all over the place. And so for me, thinking about the process and being at this point, alarm bells are going off. Alarm bells, I'm like, oh man, what do we do here? So in early February, I produced a memo, and I produced it in early February so I could present it to the council and planning commission at their February meetings to say, okay, here are some of the basic parameters of stuff we need to look at. And that was a primer for the March 8th Planning Commission City Council joint meeting, which was really kind of a milestone meeting in that, okay, we have a lot of education, self-education under our belts. We have some understanding of the type of directions that we can take. Let's see if we can figure out if there's any consensus. And I want to read the last paragraph of this memo. There's a lot of stuff in there, but just the last paragraph. There are other things to discuss and applicable details that may come to play since every jurisdiction is different. But July 1st will be here soon, and all Oregon jurisdictions are facing the same ticking clock. Narrowing down these issues will help direct subsequent efforts, focus, and discussion so we can start making efficient progress in this effort. Efficient progress was underlined because I was worried about the signs of inefficiency ahead at the time. So if we look at this kind of timeline, so to speak, and the two columns of percentages. Through this exercise, there was the Planning Commission version, and then there was this other version. So I should explain, well, why do we have two versions? What's going on here? So let me explain that. At that March joint meeting, hoping for consensus, it was clear there may not be consensus. And after that meeting, it was crystal clear. And at that joint meeting, there was some general guidance from the council about avoiding a managed site concept where you have a specific site or sites where people can camp versus the where you cannot camp example, where you specify where you can't camp, that leaves other places for people to find. And we had our legal counsel, Aaron Heisel, at that meeting. And generally the council seemed to favor simplicity and the non-managed site, largely based on Aaron Heisel's guidance. But the Planning Commission was really focused on the managed site concept. And this is why I prepared these percentages. Because as staff, we're like, okay, well, we're gonna be in this situation where we're right here. And even some of our earlier meetings where, okay, council, time's running out, we need this general guidance. And some of the road signs for this path of travel suggested that managed sites would be something problematic to the legislative body of the city. So in March, I'm going, holy bleep, and then prepare this alternative version. That way, at least we have something should the council not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation, which those road signs suggested was possible. So that's how the version that you have before here was born. It was in March. Now, if we compare that with the evolution of the Planning Commission version, the Planning Commission one did start before that. It was kind of a baby in March. And I should also mention that this alternative version did pull things from at least the version that the Planning Commission had at that time. So anyways, then, we got to, I don't know, probably a 60% code, at least that way for myself, as these discussions occur in the following months, I'm not stressed out thinking if the council doesn't go with this, we're gonna have to start from scratch. At least we have something to be able to, okay, well, they didn't go with it. We have this, we can just whip it up. And so basically we're prepared. We're trying to be a good Boy Scout or Girl Scout. So back in March, it was at 60%. It's there if we need it. From that time, the planning commission version did evolve, and it got, to nearly complete, 90%, maybe 95%. And the other reason for doing that in March was so it could be discussed with the planning commission and city council. There was no hidden facts that there was this other version. And I should mention that it had nothing to do with the city of Rainier. Nobody was tracking that. The city, just like other cities, adopted something and it came up later on. So it wasn't based on Rainier at all. Rainier came later. So any discussion of that is incorrect. So it was all about having that backup plan in case what ended up happened. As of course, what happened, you ended up choosing to go the direction without managed sites. So I want to talk about the ordinance just in general. Now, this planning commission version, myself and the commissioners, we spent just hours and hours on it. A lot of time, a lot of late meetings. And so, I'm motivated from that perspective to try to include stuff. And the council talked about that before. He talked about purple, because one was in red, one was in blue. But the planning commission,
I just want to say at that joint meeting, which was in March. There was never a discussion of having it in residential neighborhoods. There was the main hiccup in that difference in our plans was an encampment or no encampment. I sat in on that meeting, that's what I heard. And I just want to make sure that that is very clear, and we also have a process that if this is not working, we have the ability to adopt a resolution to modify any ordinance we so choose. I want to state that right now, because that has been a lot of work right there. It's got a lot of people upset, and it didn't have to. I just want to state that because it's been a long process. It's been very cumbersome. The state law, we didn't come up with it. We're not fighting amongst each other. We're just trying to adhere to a state law. So I just want to make that clear. And I would appreciate, yeah.
It wasn't just residential either, just for the record.
Yes,
It was
business.
parks and businesses from the very beginning.
I know. So, but it is state law and here we are. So let's look at the ordinance and see what we have and you're getting ready to go.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
what I wanted to cover.
So we try to include what we could, but the planning commission version was very much an ordinance of itself. And it's kind of like trying to put use Ferrari parts on a Chevy. They're not terribly compatible. So we try to add what we could. And I'll kind of talk about that briefly. So first of all, there's a findings and purpose section. This is taken directly from the planning commission. The only thing we changed was there was a finding about being 400 feet from businesses, residences and stuff, etc. And we changed that to 100 yards. And this is based on that reasonably objectionable aspect that I described earlier. 400 feet, first of all, that number came from a street vacation ordinance. It's a law, I think, from like 1980, and it's really I don't call it a very good comparison example for what we're dealing with here. And it's also kind of an abstract number. So 100 yards, what's that? Well, that's a football field.
Yep. And
a football field is a more universal unit of measurement that approximates that number.
Well, it's also 100 paces for anybody who wants to stretch their legs out a little bit.
Yeah, good point.
So let's fly through these because we're already kind of like way behind and that's good. I love that you're doing this. Let's not get too in depth. I think that's very reasonable. What you got there?
Okay, so definitions, and this, this is one of the things we just had some comments on. So Camping more than 24 hours, it becomes established. This is important because there's a statute that says once a camp becomes established, it requires a 72-hour notice before removal. And so in cases where camping is allowed, in most cases, you need to add 3 days to that for a total potential stay time. There's a relocation factor. And excludes boats and vehicles that are addressed in other codes. Now,
Some cities have 12 hours.
some cities have 12 hours, yeah. And early on in this effort, we talked about some of those lesser numbers, and our legal counsel recommended against those because they wouldn't necessarily be as legally defensible. We've talked about this duration just quite a bit. And in April, I was looking at my notes, he recommended the 24 hours for smaller communities. We could, there's nothing that says we couldn't make it a greater amount of time. But that recommendation has been pretty consistent throughout this multi-month process. If you want to change the number, we could, but it is at 24 based on a pretty consistent recommendation.
Is it at 24 and then saying
Yeah.
that you will be served the paper saying you have to move and then you have 72 hours? Cause I'm really confused. about that.
Yeah, so
So play it out like if a police were to come and tell this person, they would serve them a paper and say, hey, you gotta go. And what would that look like as far as time?
they're supposed to post a notice in English and Spanish saying that they have that amount of time. So let's say, 24 hours and 5 minutes elapses.
Right.
An officer goes out there and, hey buddy, sorry man, I gotta post this.
Mhm.
And then they have 72 hours. And so
Okay.
that's what creates that 4 days.
Okay.
It's confusing because let's just give them 4 days. The problem is you have these different laws working
Right.
with
You
each
have to give them
other.
That 72-hour notice and then, okay, so realistically though, it's not 24 hours, they have 3 days,
4 days,
4 days.
24 plus 72 hours.
Wanted to clarify that for the record.
In places where it's okay to do so.
Okay.
So there's the relocation stuff. The time, like I said, 24 hours.
Which is reasonable.
The city manager has some ability to finagle that, if some unique circumstance comes up. But if it's more than 30 days, I need the council's blessing. And then there's some places where no camping is allowed in anywhere. And it's not camping, it's establishing a campsite, which is having camping stuff out there. So the places where it's not allowed. And I will have maps, so we just don't have to rely on text. I'll show the maps after we get through these slides, which there's not too many of them. But all parks. Now we put the exception, we do allow camping with a fee, and we separated those out so it's clear.
Because we have camping parks, yes.
Yeah, like Sand Island, there's a fee structure, fee process. We made sure the law differentiates between those. Now, one thing that you want to be aware of is Dalton Lake is not a park, and it's mostly outside city limits. So it's in kind of this weird, different area. I remember Terry Moss, our previous police chief, lamenting because we have a agreement to be able to use it for passive public recreational purposes, and it gives us the ability to enforce local codes. But if it's not in city limits, our laws don't apply. And I remember Chief Moss talking about how officers will go down there and they just move outside city limits and.
Let Council Berkeley jump in.
Thank you. And from my observations down there, most of the camping at Dalton Lake actually occurs on private property. On that property owned by Emmert. And also, there occasionally does some camping right up to the bluff, but that a lot of it's on the other side of the trail. It's between the Bluff Trail and Rutherford Parkway, and that's a private property.
And it goes back to that, I think the bulk is on private property here in St. Helens.
Yes, I do too. So let's keep walking through this kind of fast because I'm just trying to look at an agenda here and I got a lot of stuff in the evening too. And so.
Yeah, I know, I
know.
we took all the time.
Yep.
On the planning commissions,
Well, there
we're here at the last minute with
Yeah.
something, so we have to explain it.
yes, everything's reasonable so far.
And the purpose of the memo in February and the meeting in March was to prevent this from happening, and unfortunately it did.
I know. Well, what I'm saying is let's walk through this and if anybody has any unreasonable thing they need to see, speak up. And if you don't, we don't need to go in depth about where homeless. And another thing that's been overlooked is we do have a homeless situation here in St. Helens. And we need to have some dignity and respect for those who are stuck in that position. That has completely been overlooked through this whole goddamn thing. It's utterly ridiculous. We're all, but I want us to go through this fairly faster. And if you think something's unreasonable, speak up, council.
So I was waiting until the end of Jacob's presentation. I do appreciate the question that was asked about whether with the 24 hours, if that meant 24 hours of posting in addition to the 3 days. I do though think that just the very fact that people who are in a situation are in this kind of situation where they are camping or eating in place. The fact that they've got this 24 hours on their mind could perhaps exacerbate the situation. As I understand the reasonableness of the ordinance in so much what we consider reasonable, but because it's a poorly written law, and it's unfortunate that our legislature has been stymied to, I think they were trying to address some of the issues. That the reasonableness is from the point of view of the houseless, the homeless person that can allow for the putting in a lawsuit. So I also know that Aaron, I respect the work he's done on this. Oftentimes talks about offering grace. And so I would prefer that we had at least a 48-hour rather than the 24, taking into account, I think, the humanity of folks who are in this situation. And I do think too that we have tried to keep that in mind, and that was one of the reasons that the Planning Commission wanted to make sure we did have those findings at the beginning that talked about what the reasons for homelessness are, and trying to apply that so.
Now's the time while we're going through it. If you find something reasonable, let's talk about it then.
So I'm gonna cover the last bullet a little bit next. So there's certain places where it's just not allowed at all. And that's all residential zoning districts and the riverfront district. If you recall, when we did discuss this at previous planning commission and city council meetings, I want to repeat, this was discussed at previous meetings in April, as early as April. So it's not new, it's not secret. But we talked about residential. We didn't talk about the riverfront district, but we figured, well, we better add that as part of this kind of the base proposal. So that's why it talks about going from 60 to 100. We just added it at the end. So just understand that there are some places where it's just not allowed at all. Where it is allowed, there are still some stipulations. So for example, it's not allowed within 100 yards of any entrance to a residence or business. And so that's intended to allow some grace, some allowance in places, but still try to provide that buffer, which we expressed, the city council and planning commission expresses the concern early on. So any public rights of way, if there's some public rights of way that aren't developed, and that could make people uncomfortable, except sidewalks when not blocked, by all users. Sidewalks in the excluded area don't count, within 100 yards from a school property. Within any public owned building not maintained for, camping purposes, we didn't want to have a situation, well, I'm just gonna sleep at camp here, where does it say I can't? We want to make sure there was something like that, and then 50 feet from any, Milton Creek, which is the same distance used in our development code riparian wetland standards, and then 75 from, Columbia River, Multnomah Channel, Scappoose Bay, also from, the code. So manner provisions. Now, this is a type of thing where the approach to this can vary depending on what the community is doing. If the city had a managed site concept, which we don't have the managed specific site, then, you may want to have a grocery list of things because you're trying to manage the site and you want to have stipulations for that. But that's not where we're at. It's a different scenario. So for optimum enforcement, for the things that we care about, chapters that are not the camping chapter should be relied on. The problem with the camping chapter is we cannot criminalize homelessness. Misdemeanor, felony, things like that. We can't do that. It's against case law. And so we're hampered a little bit. But trash by anybody, regardless of their socioeconomic status, is something that can be enforced separately. So that's a really important thing. I know throughout this process, people gotten a lot excited about, well, we should put this in there, wasn't there? And then it's really important that we focus on some of those other chapters for that. For example, if we're talking about fire, that's addressed in chapters 812 and 836. And there's outdoor fire prohibitions, but there's some exceptions like cooking fires. And that's stuff that could be looked at later on. So some of the specifics though that are in there cannot occupy more than a 12 by 12 foot space. That's from the Planning Commission recommendation. No obstruction of passageways. There's a 24-hour location thing. No vegetation, ground disturbance. That was revised from the Planning Commission recommendation. No fee required. Again, we're separating from the normal conventional camping where there's a fee. No rubbish, sanitary conditions, comply with other laws. And I guess the way I would say it is the camping chapter is the nudge. The other ones that are unrelated to camping can be the hammer if needed. Not that we want to use the hammer. So violation, like I said, we can't criminalize homelessness. It's a pretty small fine, $50. The judge can reduce that, and then there's some provisions about eliminating it if they talk to a local provider. So a little bit of incentive there. So let's look at the maps. The map slides. So this should be a familiar map. This map has been around since November. In our fact-finding phase, we're like, okay, well, what property does this apply to? And so what this does is it takes city, county, and state property and highlights them in red, orange, and purple respectively, just so we can look at that. Now that also includes public rights of way, which aren't colored as much. If you look closely, you can tell that they're unshaded. There's a yellow shading for city limits, but that's the area. And if we take that same map and then we maybe better to do a full screen.
Zoom to page. Visible.
Anyways, so the black areas are the exclusion areas that we talked about. So those, yeah, thanks, Kathy. So those are the areas that, just no camping and no placement of camp materials. The manner provisions, the 24-hour, things like that would apply to other places. The next map. It's the same one, but what I did is I took all the other non-industrial zoning districts and made them white, just so you could kind of see some of the differences in there. And then I have the zoning map there too, in case, we needed to talk
Well,
about.
and there's
that.
equal of that property that's private that is, where people are probably potentially staying on too. Just so you know, I know we're only dealing with our property.
And chances are that
Violet's Villa scenario. Maybe the. I'm saying, but maybe Port of Columbia County has some.
chances are that's gonna remain the case, because people go to where they're more comfortable. It just so happens that the private open space is more quote unquote accommodating for whatever reason.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Any questions for Jacob?
I've got a few comments if now's a good time.
Yeah, go ahead, Counselor Sunday.
First, Jacob, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done on this. I know you spent a lot of time on this, and thank you as well. It was my hope that you could incorporate as much of the Planning Commission draft as you could, and I think you've done the best that you could with that. I think you've got as much in there as you possibly could, so thank you. With Counselor Berkeley, I'm a little stuck on the 24-hour thing too. I just don't see how it's helping to solve a problem. I know a big part of this law is that we're not able to punish someone for being homeless. And I know it's a judgment on my part and it's wrong, but when I think of somebody that's homeless, the first thing that comes to mind for me is a drug addict or somebody that's mentally ill and out of their mind. But not every homeless person is like that. I was just at McCormick Park the other day and there's a mother living in her car with her teenage son. So there's people that are just going through a hard time that are trying to get back on their feet. And when you force them to move every 24 hours, to me, that seems like that's taking away time that they could be seeking resources and getting help that they need to better themselves. So just looking at your notes, Jacob, it caught my attention. More grace is more lawsuit resistance. And you've already said other cities are being challenged on this 24-hour thing. So to me, it makes sense to offer more grace, even if it's just like Patrick said, 48 hours. If it's 2 days, that's a little more grace than 24. I also had a question. You talked about maybe extending it to other areas. My question was just maybe the Holton district. I don't know why we would single out the Riverfront district and not the Holton Business District. And then also would just maybe encourage, if we can't protect all of Dalton Lake, to maybe protect the portion that we could. If that makes any sense, but those are just my thoughts.
You gonna make a comment? Anderson, thought I heard you.
Come on, I got something.
I think 24 hours is reasonable, given the fact that they're gonna have the 72-hour notice that gives them 4 complete days, right? I think that's completely reasonable. I don't see adding another 24, that gives them 5 days. If the point is for them to rest, sleep, that is more than enough time as far as I'm concerned.
Only thing I can speak on is, I'm okay with either, and I don't know how that would go about changing an ordinance, on the fly. Between now and tonight, is the Holton district is where a lot of the resources are for, and that's probably, that is why it was excluded, is because that's where the resources are for, people who need the advocates, like community action and a lot of folks and stuff like that.
And it's central.
Yeah, so.
And the Riverfront District, that was out originally. You have the Jordan Center.
Suspect that there's gonna be influx, and if there is, we can modify it, but we do not suspect an influx of what you currently see in the midtown right now. Which I haven't seen nothing other than a couple carts and some people with a lot of bikes with trailers or whatever, like we typically do in any community. Any and every community. Drive around in Oregon, look at the cities. It's happening there too, so. Some are a lot worse than us, and thank God that we have the resources here and we care about our homeless. And that's the one thing that, again, I feel like, man, we're overlooking that. Imagine being in that position. Even if you are mentally ill and you cannot get the help, you don't think you're ill. That's the weird thing about mental illness, is you don't think you're ill. What, addiction, an obsessive mind, continuing to chase after those highs is mental illness. It is. So, and it doesn't matter who loves you or who's trying to reach out to you. Because you think you're right. It's really sad. We have a mental health issue in this country. What we have.
So I would like to be able to make the appropriate modifications between now and tonight. If we can get some idea of consensus.
If you two aren't stuck, it sounds like we could meet a little bit. I don't know. I mean, 24 is better than, I've watched Scappoose too, them deliberate, and they said 12 hours and they can actually pick up and sleep in the parks during the daytime.
I think another
And
thing,
they felt it was reasonable at 12 hours.
another thing to note is that in there, it said that there could be reasonable accommodations that could exceed that. And that would be up to our city administrator on a case scenario, right? I remember up to 30 days. So if there's someone who is trying to seek resources, we know they're connected, we know they're doing all the things and they need a little bit more time, then we can accommodate those on a case by case scenario. But I think 4 days is reasonable.
Yeah, it's what I like to call a release valve clause.
Yeah.
Move along. So time, I'm hearing,
I'm okay with 24. I mean, that's really what I'd like to, it's already written. But if it's a deal breaker, I would rather we serve our community and everybody be heard here.
I don't like me, the deal breaker, it just takes a majority, it takes 3 of the 5. And I know we try to work for consensus,
Yeah.
but we don't always have consensus. And I also know that the agreements we have is though that if we do oppose something, but it eventually passes, then we support the decision that was made by the majority.
That's right.
So still strongly believe, and I do think one of the reasons is from the point of view of the homeless or whoever about objectivity, that 48 hours gives us a little bit more reasonableness and leeway from potential liability or lawsuit. But again, when it comes to the vote and try to vote against it, and but passes, I of course would support the decision that is made by our majority.
and it's, there's some logistics. It's potentially that as part of your adoption, you could make those changes in the fly. I don't, going to 48 hours, that's probably no big deal. Adding Holton, that's easy. It's just a couple words. And then including the area that we do own along Dalton Lake. We have to figure out how to word that, but that wouldn't be, it wouldn't be impossible.
So we do own it,
The portion that we do,
we lease, we don't own, do we own it?
well, we are
State land.
we own portions of the area, particularly that associated with the water filtration plant.
That side of
Yeah, that's in the city. That's in the city. We do not,
well, we own it.
it's on my.
It's a Columbia City address, but it's in city limits. I've been looking at these maps a long time, so I don't want to get into it.
So. I think we should just. My gut feeling says leave it as it is and we can adjust as we need to.
I agree with it.
Me too.
Community action does a great, our police officers do a good job of maybe vetting a mother who is with her children, like Councilor Sundin had mentioned, and saying, well, you know, there's some resources. And I've witnessed community action, actually, I don't know where they get the funding for sometimes, so I can't say they'll do it for everybody, but I've seen them put them up in a hotel for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days sometimes. And again, I can't speak on their resources and their funding for everybody, but I have witnessed that, so,
See, I make churches and there's lots of.
yes.
That help.
So, okay, thank you for all your hard work on this. Too, and now we're gonna move on to Jacob's annual planning commission report.
Okay, and this will be quick.
Okay.
So we'll try to make up the difference a little bit. So the general theme of this year's planning commission report is more stuff. More stuff. So number of meetings, last year it was 12, this year it was 15. That's because of some of the joint meetings. The planning commission had a retreat. That was an increase of 25%. And so June's next week. So you still want to have that meeting? It's scheduled.
Well, no, I was actually gonna bring it up later, we were wanting to postpone that. I know for our city staff and myself, we have a parade, we have Citizens Day, we have another council meeting, and we also have a city county dinner that we have to start preparing for. Which is a big deal, so hoping to find a time in late July that we can do that, that works for everybody.
Yeah, June is kind of a brutal.
It's gone.
It's a brutal
It's
one
completely gone, yes,
to step into.
well, that's seriously how much we have going on.
Okay, so that's something we'll talk about at the regular session.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And 13 nights.
So a little bit more public meetings and, you know, we just started this regular joint meeting thing that it could be a slightly higher number next year. Number of public hearings, you know, not much difference there. Last year 18, this year 19. Planning director decisions. So the planning commission gets forwarded decisions made administratively. That way they have a chance to review them, have questions, just become enlightened in the process. And that increased 60%, 35 to 56. I was actually kind of surprised about that. Discussion items. Not surprisingly, with the planning commission becoming proactive, this increased 133% from 15 to 35. That includes, you know, the stuff you can read there, but it's basically everything, including the kitchen sink, as far as stuff that the planning commission can get involved with. And it just lists the stuff they talked about, their own meetings, and then I think these special ones. Architectural review, this is one that can vary significantly from year to year. Architectural review only applies to the riverfront district, and if there is a number, it means there's stuff happening. And hey, 0 to 6, that's 600% increase. That means things are happening downtown. So that's good and keeps the commission on their toes, acting as the historic landmarks commission. Proactive items, like I said, and as you know, the planning commission has decided to be a proactive body. And there was 2 items that they have taken on. One that needs no introduction because we've talked about it exhaustively for months and months. And I think is concluding. I guess we'll see what happens tonight. Fingers crossed on that. And the other one is architectural standards, which we talked about, but we haven't really got our hands dirty. And that's the next one in line. I hope, you know, I don't think this 3115 was very fun for some of our planning commissioners. Some meetings were pretty toxic, and I think this architectural subject will be more inclusive for all planning commissioners. There's a wider interest in it, and it's not reacting to something that we have to do. It's something that is desired to be done. So I'm hoping it's going to get rid of some of that toxicity that's developed over the several months and create a better team. Future projects. We talked about a couple of them. won't talk about those more. And then I'm sure the planning commission will help us with other things going on, like the economic opportunities analysis and transportation systems plan efforts, which we think are forthcoming this year. What can the council do to support the commission? No real change from last year, you know, talking about another planner and being included. Now, we understand that there's a fiscal impracticality. And really talking about this is just to make sure it's in the dialogue. You know, this could be something that's several years out. But as we continue to grow as far as population, as far as dealing with state and federal bureaucracy, and as we continue to grow with our ambitions, that threshold in needing someone will come closer. I still think it may be when urban renewal really starts picking up, because you know, Jenny's role in that. But chances are we'll be saying the same thing in these reports year after year. That's it.
Oh, you really did make that fast.
I didn't see Yoda in there or anything. Not
That's
impressed.
the planning department report.
Okay.
That's it.
Any questions for Jacob? Yeah,
Yeah, I know it's not online, but Jacob, I need you to come to the police department and train our staff on the new ordinance about HB 3115. There's gonna be a lot of questions from the officers and we have a short time, so I think getting it right from the person who developed the ordinance. So I'll schedule a time, not to put you on the spot, schedule a time to have it there and we can make sure that we got marching orders, and I think that's the best way to approach this.
Sure. And John, you'll have my resignation by then.
all right.
I'm sure they'll be there too.
Okay, and wow, we even got back on schedule real close. Okay, our next item is the annual report from Parks and Trails Commission.
Lathrop.
Hey, sorry you got we got back on schedule now, so we're 6 minutes off.
I will be maybe more pleasant. Thank you for having me. I'm Dana Lathrop. I'm chair of the Parks and Trails Commission for the city of St. Helens. And I have a little presentation for you all. Thank you. Okay, so this is the current lineup of the commissioners. Myself, Dana as chair. We have Lynn as our vice chair, and then the remaining members are Jerry Belcher, Jake Woodruff, Howard Blumenthal, Paul Barlow, Lauren Gonzalez, who just resigned this past week, and Scott Jacobson. And then our change in park staff at the beginning of this year is Buck Tuppers. So I wanted to give a round of gratitude to Buck. He's been fantastic. Good. This is something new that we've put together. We started implementing this more so last year, but this is this year's schedule for who in the commission, we each are kind of assigned to different parks. And so we visit them more frequently, bring issues up to the commission, et cetera, for each of them. So this is just our kind of calendar of who's in charge and what months they will be presenting at our commission meetings. If you're interested in learning more about a particular park or kind of the goings on there, then that's a nice little schedule there. Move on to the next one. So something new for the parks is there has been 2 off-leash dog park areas that were recently adopted, bringing the total in St. Helens to 3. And they are located at McCormick Park, Heinehuman, and Gray Cliffs Waterfront Park. Regarding McCormick Park this year, there's been multiple work parties in the past year, and they've been focusing on clearing the invasive and overgrown plants, specifically in the Japanese gardens, and looking so great. And those are located behind the Veterans Memorial there at McCormick Park. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go take a peek. And then McCormick Park has had a lot of utilization for community events, including Citizens Day at the park, the NAMI Walk this year, which was a great turnout, and the disc golf tournaments. They've been really fantastic. Columbia View Park. So the design for redevelopment has been finalized and is being put out for bids as far as I'm aware. 13 Nights in the River has begun for the year with some changes in regards to current construction projects, changes in the parking, and the recent events as of this last week. And so those are a few things that are in transition.
Move the riff off.
And then there was some structural deterioration of the gazebo. And at the time that I submitted this, the plans for demolition had begun, but I'm pretty sure been attended to.
Yeah, it's taken care of.
Regarding Nob Hill Nature Park, there's been 3 new benches installed along the trail courtesy of the Lions Club, and there's 1 more planned. Park and Trail has been utilized during the fall tourist season for the Whispers in the Woods, which gets great reviews. There's been multiple work parties completed during the past year focused on trail improvements, invasive plant management, and preservation of the local camas and other flowers. Non-native cherries were removed along 5th Street and will be replaced with native varieties. Campbell Park, the large stones were removed from the parking areas. It looks so great. The pickleball courts were finalized and they are in use regularly. There has been continued vandalism in regards to the restrooms and the other outbuildings. Yeah, I've been talking with Buck about some flexible plans on just different ways that they can continue to manage that and try to keep the bathrooms open as much as possible for public use, but that is an ongoing issue.
Before we've talked about cameras.
Yeah, so nothing official as of this time, so I'd hate to speak out of turn. But I had proposed some possible utilization of the external of the buildings for some mural and art projects to bring in like some community involvement and community ownership and pride. I put that on pause for right now while we talk about some maybe internal changes to the bathrooms themselves to limit the amount of free space that can be utilized for things like sleeping or other activities that have been noted in the bathrooms. So it is kind of up in the air right now, but we are talking about it and working on it actively as a commission and in conjunction with our staff. So hopefully that continues to improve, but we are aware about it and working on it together. So there's been some tree trimming and maintenance of the ball fields and changing of the lights that are there to bring improvement to the ball fields. And then approval for future removal of the elephant slide due to structural deterioration on that side. I know it's so sad, but for the safety of the community, we discussed that. Regarding Sand Island, there's been continued work and improvements of the facilities and the campground. Sites can be booked online, and I put the link in there because that was a really great website to explore. It's super user friendly, so I was enjoying that. And then I hear there is a courtesy shuttle that launches from the Marina boat launch. And it looks like there may be some other fantastic boat announcements soon.
Yes, that's tourism.
Yeah. And then
That's a good point. The marina does offer services Monday through Thursday to go over and utilize the island for free
yes,
and get you back. You call the number down there at the pit.
it's also on the website. There's all that
Yes.
information
Three
right there.
separate, well, just.
Right? Yes, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Owned by the marina. Yeah.
Correct. And then the Sand Island even hosts fun events, including like the sand castle competitions, and those really bring in a crowd. They're fantastic. Dalton Lake Nature Preserve, there's been multiple work parties throughout the past year. They've been focusing on improvements to the walking trails along the lake and river access, including new walking bridge improvements made to the parking area located on Oregon Street, and that is looking very nice over by the animal shelter. The St. Helens Urban Trail, I know we've talked about it for many years, but there's been some growth there. Some temporary changes to the proposed trail have been made to accommodate for the waterfront and Columbia View Park construction. The trail would be rerouted up through the plaza and down First Street. Some plans for the upcoming year, marking the trail using painted cement markers, promoting the trail utilizing a virtual map and website, and then a proposed installation of a kiosk marking the trail start at the Columbia View Park. And I'd like to note that that would be with understanding the limitations to the current and future construction projects in the area. Those are our plans.
For 2 years. 2 years. That's it.
And then just some thank yous, for our public works staff and directors. members of the public who come forward with suggestions and improvements for our park. City and park staff who've been keeping us running, they've been great. And then all the volunteers, including the Garden Club, Kiwanis, Watershed Council, Lions Club, they support us a lot. And the Parks and Trails Commissioners who donate their time to enhance a little bit. Questions?
One question, just thinking about Campbell in particular, because I spent a lot of time there during this time of the year for softball. So the rocks that were removed, have you guys talked about the problems that might occur with the rocks being removed? Because there's currently an RV that's been parked there, like in the park, next to the bathrooms, and it's been there for over a week. And I think if there was a rock there, it wouldn't have been able to be parked in the park,
Yeah,
which is really unfortunate.
yeah. So last I spoke with Buck, the plan is to install more of the cement parking markers.
Okay,
That way there, it's a unified look throughout, and we will plan to have those barriers there, but that they're not just large boulders that they were having to mow around. Which
Yeah,
was difficult
okay.
for the staff to get it done in a timely manner. And so, yes, there are plans. I don't know the time frame or anything as far as that.
just a thought, because I was like, oh, it looks so much better without the rocks, and now we have an RV. stuck in
Yes.
there. Oh, gosh, of course, but. Just a thought.
I don't know, you guys do a lot of work out there. I see you guys out there doing all kinds of stuff. Again, Counselor Sundin, I don't know if he's on there, but he's constantly reporting on what you guys are doing, which is good. You have the liaison there. And keeps us informed of what's going on, and we appreciate all the volunteers and the Friends of Parks that help out through our city, so
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah. Yep. Hey, discussion regarding rates, Financial Director Gloria Bush.
Thank you.
You get the fun stuff, Gloria.
I get the fun stuff. Not really. Okay, so I'm gonna start with utility rates, and just kind of go over my memo. The rate study was reviewed by the council, presented to council last May, a year ago. And they recommended a 5-year rate increase. 3% for water, 8% for sewer, and $2.40 this year for storm. I don't recall what the percentage is, but for this year it's $2.40. This is to cover the long range needs of each of those systems, which includes the operating budget, the growth forecasts, and capital improvement plan, cash flow, and debt management. The highlight of those being the capital improvement plan. There is significant capital improvements that are planned, especially for this year and over the next couple of years. But this coming fiscal year, there's right about $35 million capital improvement plan. Significant amount of that is in sewer.
Yeah.
The rest is the public safety facility. So the budget that was proposed that the budget committee reviewed included these rate increases for the utilities. Moving on to the public safety fee, there was a lot of discussion at the budget committee meetings regarding the public safety fee. It ended up that the recommendation from the committee was to increase the public safety fee to $10. There is still some unresolved items in that
raising it to $10 could provide for 1 year of an additional police officer. But
It could
that
actually
was
spend a year and a half. It could do roughly,
roughly,
yes. That'd be
but
close.
that would be hard to budget for just a year and a half of an
I know,
officer.
and with retirements, it would help out maybe.
Right.
What we have going on.
So beyond that, so with the $10 fee, you could cover an additional police officer for 1 year. After that, there would be no coverage. We would be back in that budget problem for adding officers. At $12, you probably could, through the future years, cover another police officer. That I have to say, though, it would cover that additional officer. However, it doesn't do anything for our long term forecast for the general fund in total. So that would need to be revisited.
We also don't have the final price on the new police station building either, if it's.
Right.
More debt and.
Correct, so we have some unresolved, yeah. Exactly, and so we have some unresolved items around that.
But it would allow us to have the funding there for this year for the officer, the unfilled position.
For the unfilled position
Yes. Is that correct? Yes.
1 year.
for 1 year.
We have people retiring. I don't like doing that because we said it would be strictly for the police facility when we talked about this idea.
Yeah.
Yes, so. And if John's, if there is a little bit over, that would cover the gap of that. How long is $10 for the payout for the police station?
Pardon me?
20
Years.
20 years.
Yeah.
So. And I just want to make sure that, because I know we probably have people listening, is we have this design. The $10 per. Auxiliary dwelling unit.
For equivalent volume.
Dwelling unit, so the 239 apartments out there is 239 units. They will pay their $10 a month
Per unit,
per unit. Same with the new apartments that come in.
any new construction.
Which this is the cheaper, most efficient way to go, and that's why we're moving forward with this. And have had a huge ad hoc committee. I just want to make that very clear that we're not, we're being very, very well transparent and have been for years. So I just want to make sure that it doesn't get confused with what the county has. I had people call me thinking I'm in charge of county cops, and I'm not. We are the city of St. Helens. I want to make sure I clear up that confusion.
And so Mayor, I think to add on to what you're saying also with this. Whereas if we had a levy or whatever, I think we'd be kind of bound by that. This $10 is something that can be reduced. So it's not necessarily permanent. And that the budget committee also did, I think recall, look at that we should though look at perhaps other levies or other avenues to respond. And that it's the reason why we felt we had to, originally it was solely for the public safety facility. We also lost a lot of revenue due to state sharing of fundings that undermined with our $3 projection was based on that. And so our ability to receive revenue was undermined by state law. So that, yeah, I too feel reluctant that originally was solely for facility, but after also having the opportunity to ride along with one of our officers on a couple of occasions, and being in the tour of the police facility and hearing the testimony of some of our officers and the impact it is having on their mental health and their family personal life, that this is when you should take build that position.
Well,
Okay, you're in it, well, I get the cup copy.
okay, we're gonna talk anyway, so might as well be. I'm extremely concerned about the sustainability of this plan. I'm just gonna be, very, forthfront about that is. 1 year, we're gonna be right back at this before a blink of an eye, and then here we are again. And one officer is just not enough. I'm just gonna be super concerned about that. One officer is not enough, it's not enough. So it's a slap in the face really to our police, and it's really unfair that we're having to figure this out like this. And so I'm sorry to them. Because that wasn't what my goal was when I wanted to increase our officers. So I don't know if I can say that I feel like we've done our due diligence as a city to really be creative with staffing these police positions. And I don't think that increasing the rates to $10 is a good idea. And I don't feel comfortable doing it. But if that means that we would lose our 24-hour policing because we didn't do it, then I would do it. But I don't feel confident enough that we have explored all of our options and exhausted all of our options, looked at our assets, looked at our timber revenue. Like there is money in this city, and I think that we need to look at prioritizing that money to our law enforcement. So I'm just gonna say that on record.
Any other comments?
I would agree that it's time to get creative, look at maybe options we haven't looked at before. Maybe, I know we've talked about, we've got property that's sitting there, maybe sell some property, but I agree with Council President Chilton that we've got to do better, and that a year, I guess, is better than nothing, but we're going to be right back at this again next year, trying to figure this out again. And I don't know how we got so far off course from what we need and to what we currently have. So I don't know what our options are, but I hope we can figure something out.
I would definitely agree. I wasn't here for that conversation, but I definitely agree with us together and looking at our assets. We can definitely figure something out within a year's time, for sure.
So that the direction from the planning commission, or not, sorry, the budget
Budget
committee was that once we get past the budget, we're gonna look at revenues and expenditures and all kinds of systems to get aligned. Right now, this budget is using reserves to balance, and that's not a sustainable path already, even with the not billing things. So we're, we're not just covering the brakes here, we're starting to hit them, and it's not just police, it's other departments too. We're not doing things intentionally, but there's lots of different things. So. But the $10, the way the bonds are structured, and it's interesting, it gets right up to all of that $10 is covering that, just the debt service. So there's no extra room after in this year.
And then there'll be an additional there for the what we've agreed to with our master plans, with the projects that we have, the 35, well, the other 20 million right there. So yes.
And just as a general fiscal policy about using one-time revenues to fund long-term labor instead of recurring expenses, it's just, it's really not a
good practice.
It's not a good practice.
Yeah, we get that. Yep. We'll figure it out.
I mean,
No, but increasing rates are not desirable either, so, and especially rates that we've set for public safety, not, other things, so I'm just saying. None of it looks good right now, and I think we need to do our homework a little bit better.
these that are with a recurring fee for officers would be a sustainable revenues. So
Well, right now, we're talking about just lumping it with the money we've already been collecting, right?
you could do
For
a
public safety fee.
conceptually, you could do a capital key component to it, and you could do officer component to it, if you wanted to.
Well, I think, I didn't hear it, yeah, we could. Right now, I
Those are conversations that are.
yeah, right now we have this in front of us, and it seems like it could be a little bit of a solution. It's not completely transparent because it's a year's worth of one salary. Where we were, and what we were selling this on, okay? So if that would be my only hiccup. But we did discuss this in our budget committee meeting. And there wasn't a lot of pushback. With Ray Freeheim was very vocal and clerk at that we need to study for other revenue sources, so, yeah, so. Again, trying to be as transparent as we can. That was the one thing that wasn't discussed from years ago. We've been working on this for quite some time. Quite some time. So, Laura, did you have, were you done? I didn't know.
I don't have anything additional.
Okay. All right, okay, we're right on schedule. Look at that. Holy cow. Okay, review leak adjustment request from St. Frederick's Catholic Church.
Yeah, St. Frederick's in the convent building, they had a leak some time ago, which is usually about a $50 utility bill, and they got a bill for $4,800. And the council's policy, the leak adjustments over $1,000 come to the council for consideration, and it did pretty extensive damage to the building by the look of the pictures there. So the water that doesn't go into the sewer is charged off, and then they're looking at a credit. 3,700, so they would leave them a balance of 1,086.59. Council's done that, they've done.
Yeah, we've done a couple churches, we've done a couple of commercial buildings. I think we've done one or two residences. Yeah.
Well, and also you've done adjustments back to just the normal usage in the past too, and that's something we've done.
And we also adjusted the pool with leaking.
And that's flushed a lot of water off the floor.
So I'm good with it. We'll put on.
At the $1,000.
Yeah, what's they're asking for? We'll put on for tonight, Kathy, and that, and then Christmas ask when that needs to be discussed, we need that.
Well, they didn't specifically request an adjustment for $1,000. That's just our policy for netting out this water that can go in the sewer.
We'll give you the ability, through the water department to figure that out. Approval of that.
Comfortable with that.
So, what are you uncomfortable with? You said it's $3,500.
We're writing off $3,700 for
Yes.
the sewer charge of it, and then
Yes.
the half of the water is proposing to be. That's what the policy says, council's policy.
Okay, yes, because
When I go through policy, it's.
they have outside irrigation too.
I don't.
So that would be
their
fair.
normal bill is like $50.
How much is it?
That's what I
total?
said, when he said 50, I was like, well, $1,000, a lot more than 50.
But you could make it $1,000.
But if that's a separate the convent is metered to.
Yes.
The rest of the church.
Yes.
So it's just that building.
It's that building, yeah.
Their whole.
Okay, well, then that's charging what they normally would be. Leave that dollar amount.
$50.
Okay, not $1,000.
That's why he said that.
What's the dollar amount?
It'll be their normal bill, which there's an average in here that shows the
I mean, nothing,
time, and it's around.
nothing has changed other than a leak, but we're not,
People need to check their pipes. We have leaks all the time.
Well, it's one of those.
I bet they threw out a Hail Mary before they threw it up in us.
Maybe an entire rose.
I think I can say
I was
that.
gonna say that's inappropriate.
No, I'm Catholic, I can say that. You know, repent and ask for forgiveness.
Or so.
The faith-based community is a community partner. They do provide services.
Their job there is what. St. Helens, 31 years ago, 70 years, working there.
Okay, let's go ahead, we're gonna go ahead and take a break and resume, because we're at our 10 minute. Close enough to our 10-minute break time. 4:04.
Sorry, that was
Yeah,
unexpected. I apologize. It wasn't on the record.
Hands.
all right, so we're gonna go on to our next item on the agenda, which is a review draft proposed code of conduct for city boards, committees and commissions. Our attorney Bill Monahan on the Zoom here.
Well, Bill's getting coded on there, then just there's the code of conduct that's in your packet tonight. Evening session, and there's also a memo that Will came up as far as some potential code edits to planning commission section 2.08. That's gonna, Bill might be able to touch on both of those.
Sure.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hi, Mayor and Council and staff. So yes, after the work session about a month or so ago, where the council talked about the draft code of conduct, a couple members of the council had expressed concern that there be a provision softened, shall we say, so that there be less concern of membership that they could be removed without any process. So I took that language. I compared the code language that the staff had prepared, and I looked back at some other cities' codes, and I think I mentioned to you at the last meeting, I thought that the code looked familiar. It turned out it looked very familiar in the section to be softened, like one that I worked on when I worked in Tigard long ago. I think it was in effect back then. So there's always the discretion for the council to provide a process to give notice to an individual. What I don't suggest is that you go through a full due process situation where you have a hearing, but I'm suggesting that you could consider putting some language into the code that says that a person will be given notice of the situation. And if they choose, they'd be given the opportunity to provide some sort of written communication after probably being talked to by a staff member or potentially a designee from the city council to apprise the person of what the concerns are, to give them an opportunity to provide the council with some explanation of their side of the story, shall we say. So that's what I initially had done, and I made a couple of suggestions to the code of conduct, and I saw that in the accountability section, which is in your draft before you tonight, the council draft includes some language that I proposed that said, should it become necessary for the city council to consider the removal of a board member, it may designate a staff or council member to contact the board member to make them aware of any concerns regarding alleged misconduct, non-performance of duty, or failure to obey the laws of the federal, state, or local government. And then the board member has the option to provide a timely response to the concerns within the timeline. So I hope that addressed that. However, the page that is the code of conduct certification, where a member of the board is required to sign that they're aware of what the code of conduct is, that they've read it, they've had an opportunity to become familiar with it. There's a third bullet that says, I understand that the city council may remove me from my position if my conduct falls below these standards. And I'm suggesting just a parentheses and statement that says, whether or not the city council has informed me of concerns and provided me with an opportunity to respond to concerns within any timelines established by council. Because there may be the extreme case where it's very obvious that the person has violated the code of conduct, and you may not want to delay in your action. So you could add such language as that. So that's my proposal there. Do you want me to go on to the second item that I've worked on for you, or stop here and take questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
Well. So I bought me chewing a cookie. Appreciate your work on addressing those concerns. What I am concerned about, and this was even prior to hearing Mr. Jacobson's comments before the meeting. Had to do with, he had some concerns. With the code of conduct, especially. I think concerns about how it would be applied. Now, I do not question the integrity of my fellow council members. But I've been hearing, I hear comments and things that do make me concerned about other people bringing concerns or accusations concerning board members that are based on might be based on whatever motive. And without some kind of, and I do understand the city needing to reserve its right, because that is our role as a council to remove people at our discretion. I would still like to think that there's more of a process than just notification. Also, with the signing, and I understand the addition of the red part in parentheses about whether or not the city council has informed me. And I understand that, but I'm still very uncomfortable without having a process in place. And I think that if I were as a person, if I were wanting to, I would not volunteer to be on a board. If I were asked to sign this, and if I were already on board or commission, I would likely not sign it. So again, that just what my feelings, my thoughts, and again, if it should come to a vote, majority votes for this, I would support it if passed, but I myself am not comfortable with it.
So Councilor Berkeley, are you suggesting that instead of having a sign, them sign this, that we provide them with a letter that states they're gonna have a hearing? And then we preside over them in a hearing setting?
That might be in the mix, something like that. It could be a more informal sort of thing, but I think it would be important that whoever, if someone brings concerns about a member, that we would have done our utmost to make sure that there's a basis to it. I think that this is not in regard to Mr. Toski, but some concerns that were raised about another board member that whether true or not, I don't know that there was a whole process to really substantiate and find out what the circumstances were. And again, I do not have concerns that anyone on this council but I do have concerns that there are members of the public who have agendas or dislikes of people and things and would use it to create problems.
So what you're saying is you're asking for more of an investigative process.
Yes.
And I don't see a problem with doing that, but it's just at the end of the day, you understand that we are the legislative body, so we will still have to make a decision about how if that, person remains on the board or commission or does not.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Council President, that is what our role as a council is, and absolutely, we have that ability.
And I would be fine with that. Then if developing some type of a process or a hearing or something where we talk about it.
No, I just think that there needs to be more processes in place. This is me speaking from. We have another legislative body that's the only quasi judicial entity in this city that actually has the ability to adopt and make rules as we do. And I think that finding there was no code of conduct in there, we are held accountable to a higher and finer standard. And they should be as well. And yes, I signed up to do this. Yes, I can take the heat. No, I'm not afraid to lose power. Actually, I have less power here serving the citizens. That's why I signed up to be mayor, was to serve my fellow citizens. Now, that being said, yes, this position comes with a lot of power. And this being one of them is coming up with this type of idea to protect. I don't know about anybody else, but I got a lot of phone calls from a lot of scared people about a lot of half-truths out there. And I had to clean it up. And I even made phone calls and asked for it not to continue, and it didn't seem to matter. And there was a lot of activity, and I think that type of code of conduct is out of line with our city mission. It does not serve our citizens well. That's me personally, and I'll speak loudly and clearly in front of anybody and everybody, because that's truly what happened. It's the truth. It's not a perception.
It doesn't sound like any of us disagree that there shouldn't be consequences for unruly or unethical behavior from our boards and commissions, just as the same standard that would be held on us as a council. But it's about how we get there.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about how we could get there?
Well, I don't think, I mean, we are a legislative body, and I know from being up here for 7 years that I hear 3 sides to the story. And I always try to find that truth that's in the middle. That's the third side. And make our best decision based on the information we have and understanding the circumstances. And if it requires a hearing, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. There needs to be a process in place, for sure. Absolutely.
And then, right, and that's what I don't see is
I mean-
that we have a clearly defined process.
They have to also go through the board of ethics. They have to do everything that we have to do. And we have a code of conduct that we put on ourselves and hold each other accountable. I don't think that's reasonable. We've already done this with a different counselor.
We've
We
censored.
have done this already.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we've all signed something that states that we.
We have, but it's very vague, and that's why Bill said we cleaned it up.
Fine.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, what I hear people saying is maybe, the hearing process,
Well, what we asked Bill to do was to take a look at their code of conduct.
Yeah.
Code of conduct is part of the process to have
Mhm.
clear, objective standards to measure from and soften it. And I'm hearing it's not soft enough, and
yes.
I don't know, Bill, if there's, what does softer look like, but
I think it is soft enough. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that it's not about it being soft enough, but adding a layer to it that allows for a process of, and whoever it may be. The council investigates, the council has a hearing with said person where they sit down for an hour and, this person speaks, then this person speaks, and then we make a closing remark or something like that. Is that what you guys are thinking too? Yes.
I would recommend
Yeah.
2 counselors being appointed to be that hearing
Investigative
officers
person,
for that. And then that they would you would just have to trust in them that they would make a recommendation to the council of what should be done. Because I do not want to see
And
having a public meeting with.
yeah, and I think as much as
Good point, Kathy.
we're not looking for power, but you are council president and mayor, I think it should be you and I. Well,
Put me on the spot like that. I mean,
hopefully we never have to cross this road, ever. Water's been under the bridge. It's done. It's over.
I don't know how else we would choose a different counselor or how that would work.
My suggestion would be to choose counselors that were not directly involved in the process. I know that's very difficult to define.
I was just gonna say choose you because you're assigned to the commission, but maybe.
No, I think that's a good idea, but we'll appoint two counselors, if it's,
Try to make it as neutral as possible.
I'm okay with whatever. Yeah, I'm not biased in any way, shape or form. I'm not. Not.
My initial thought was to maybe, if it was somebody to do with the Parks Commission, that you would have somebody, one of those counselors be the liaison from the Parks Commission. Same thing with Library Board or the Planning Commission.
Okay, and then maybe Jessica?
Council President.
Sounds allocating, that's,
I
sorry.
think that makes some sense to me that the liaison and the council president.
I mean, I don't mind. I just want, the council to feel like that's fair. So if you guys do feel like it's fair and you trust Mark and I.
I think that would be acceptable.
Yeah. To make that recommendation.
So no matter what the commission is.
No, I think it depends on what the commissioner is.
Yeah.
So it would be you and then whatever the.
Liaison.
Thank you, Jessica. I have a lot going on.
Oh.
I do.
I have 3 children.
I know.
Good job.
We all do. We all do. You're right.
Well, hopefully it's never needed.
Yes.
Right, I mean, right.
So Bill, the other part of that,
We would hope that
you said you had another part that you would discuss or?
Well, yeah, I think I got direction from that. Kathy's recommendation, I think, was a great one to have a subcommittee, because I think the concern always has been, do you really want to have a hearing that's on a council agenda? I mean, that's, you've got so many items on your agenda already. So I think Kathy and I have some good direction on a potential process. So what you might want to do is to, rather than adopt the language as it is, instead say, understand the council may, I'm looking at the certification. I understand the council may remove me from my position if my conduct falls below these standards. I would take out the parentheses that I've added, and just in your record tonight, if you choose to want to adopt this language, you could also make a legislative record that it's your intent to establish a process, however, and that process would be available so that if someone's conduct is found to be falling below the standards, there would be we would know there'd be the subcommittee. I'm not sure if you want to modify the language for tonight's meeting or put it on hold and see what the process is in advance.
Sure.
But I think Kathy and I can work from that, and I think you've given some good direction. The other item that I put into the packet is, as the mayor was commenting, this code of conduct is going to apply to all of the boards and committees, as I understand it. But in particular, the Planning Commission has an elevated role, shall we say, because they do handle quasi-judicial functions. And as you know, you have a section in your municipal code, it's chapter 2.08 that relates to the Planning Commission. So as a result of this discussion process, I took a look at your code, and I prepared a separate suggestion for consideration of council should you wish to update the Planning Commission's code language. In particular, there's a section in there that deals with a very important point, and that is the issue of conflicts of interest, participation of a member of the commission when they can participate. And I found that the code language that you have was last revised in 2008. as it relates to identifying who is a member of a household, of a member of the planning commission. And the reason this is important is ORS 244, which is what the Oregon Government Ethics Commission utilizes, specifically states requirements that a member of a quasi-judicial body, including you, need to make sure that you are taking into consideration any financial conflicts of interest. The flaw that I see in the present code is it specifically lists members of the family that were probably taken from the statute as it existed in 2008, but that statute's been updated since then. The commission has given greater clarity to members of a family, and they've defined who is a member of a household or who has a business interest. So my recommendation to you is, recognizing that the legislature periodically changes that language, I would suggest that rather than be specific and say what members of a family are supposedly under the statute, list the statute, and as the legislature changes ORS 244 over the years, each time there's a change, make sure your members of the commission are made aware of that statute and have them clearly understand who is covered by that. So that's a suggestion. But then another opportunity that I thought within the Planning Commission code language is there's reference to your relationship with them and the things that they're responsible for. And it seems to me that a lot of your issues with the Planning Commission that I've been observing at your meetings recently may come down to some level of communication. So I'm suggesting that you might want to formalize within the code a statement that there would be a work plan that's developed for the Planning Commission, and that there be approval of that work plan by the City Council, because it appears that there may be some potential friction that may occur if the Planning Commission is desirous of undertaking some projects that may conflict with the other projects that we know that Jacob and his staff have to address, either because of council direction or legislative direction, or because of the time constraints that apply to land use applications. So I'm suggesting some other language that you might want to include that might hopefully improve any relationship with the Planning Commission.
Yeah, because you're right. I mean, there is sensitive approval of land use that sometimes are detrimental to what we have going on, is what I heard you kind of saying, right? Was this one example of the three you had right there?
Yeah, I think this is an example because it appeared to me that the Planning Commission's work program may not be clearly defined. The objectives, the direction from council may not have been fully understood. And the council ultimately appoints the Planning Commission. Yes, they're an independent body to make quasi-judicial decisions. But when it comes to the legislative matters, the council really has more authority, I believe, to be able to say, here's the parameters that we're willing to give you to undertake a review of such and such topic, understanding that there are other high priorities that the council has, and we really need the planning staff's attention and resources devoted to certain timelines. So I could go through the language with you if you like. I know you don't have that on your agenda for adoption tonight.
I like that though. I like that though, with moving forward with all the waterfront redevelopment and stuff, that, you know, there's gonna be things sometimes that supersede other things, and staff's attention's gonna need to be when we supersede and we direct them sometimes over what they probably have going on, is what I thought I heard you say.
Yes, you did. And in my experience with other cities, one city in particular that I work with, the Planning Commission has a number of items that unfortunately they've had to put on the back burner for quite some time, because that city has a very small planning department and they have a a lot of other council priorities that are on an established work program that the council reviews twice a year. And each time they invite the planning commission to submit a list of any new initiatives or new priorities that the planning commission would like to have added to the work program. Before the council talks about them, the staff analyzes what they believe the work effort would be to undertake those initiatives and prepares a statement for consideration of the city council. They first review it with the planning commission to see if the planning commission agrees. Yes, that's what we want. Yeah, we understand it could take 6 months to do that. And in essence, it's a which project do you want to have us undertake, council? Because there are not unlimited resources. So it helps to frame up the discussion. Planning Commission has an opportunity to state its objectives, but ultimately the council has to decide under the limitations it has.
Well, I like that because we're more, I think, a little bit more in tune with what the staff has going on here and the priorities and needs of the community as a whole, which sometimes maybe also go a little bit outside of the parameter of just what all a planning commissioner does. So I definitely would like to look at that in the future. That's what I heard you saying.
That's right.
Yes. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think, the idea of having the planning commission, be able to be proactive in addition to their required things that they have to look at and be a part of, I think was one of the goals of mine since I've been on the council to allow the planning commission to do that. But at the same time, there is a job the planning commission needs to be focusing on. So if we can straighten that out a little bit, I think it might help them also be more productive and allow them to get to some of the other things on their agenda.
Yeah, we'd like to move forward with some language on that.
Yeah, so this is not on tonight's agenda.
No,
Right.
no,
It was so right, because I think it would be important that, we have that dialogue too with.
We have something, Bill, for our joint meeting in July, because we're not gonna do anything, it's an idea, a little bit of a discussion, of course, we work together. And we'll, it looks like, that makes a lot of sense, so. And maybe even have you say your words, because it makes sense to me, and I won't be able to say that.
Sure. So I initiated it, but I also initiated the suggested language in some other sections with the softened language of the code of conduct. So what I would suggest is that Kathy and I have an opportunity to take the council's direction from today's meeting to come up with a process that there'd be a subcommittee that would in fact conduct some sort of mini hearing and make recommendation. Once the council has gone through that process, if it decides it wants to have such a process, would modify the language that I've proposed for the planning commission's code language. You obviously don't want to adopt the code language that I've proposed because it was reflecting the earlier direction council gave about the code of conduct. But yeah, I'd be happy to work on that for you.
Okay. I think we all agree on that. Yes.
Yeah, excuse me, does that mean not adopting the resolution?
Well, he said we could with the language that we
I
did.
just wanted to make sure.
But I'd suggest in your code of conduct, you might want to take out the, it's up to you whether you want to take out what I put in parentheses on the signature line.
Okay, and I also think there might be a little adjustment needed under accountability to refer to say that it would go to hearings, officers separately, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Kathy. Rather than just have it say that there's an option to provide a timely response and a perhaps a opportunity to participate in a hearing of a council appointed subcommittee or something of that nature. If you'd like, I can try to work with Kathy and get some language for you before tonight's meeting.
That'd be great.
Okay,
Thanks, Bill.
you're welcome.
All right, I just know for myself that when I speak, people don't see me as Rick Scholl, they see me as Mayor Scholl. And they always will when I'm out there. So I try to, when I'm out there, I try to be respectful and choose my words carefully. Most of the time, most of the time, we all fall short, and that's not what this is about. This isn't about the fall short problems. This is about knowing and continuing, I mean, I can go off the peripheral rails and go for a month to 2 months. And you guys wouldn't like it, and you would probably speak loudly, and I'm sure eventually there'd be a recall action. On other committees, it's not something that they're in the spotlight enough to have that happen. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's why I think this is, I hold myself accountable and I hold you guys accountable. And it's no different for our boards and commissions. That's all that this is. Not about power or control. We represent a fine city with a good city manager. He can give us a report.
A segue. Yeah, and the purpose of was just to socialize that second part with the code changes. There's nothing on the agenda.
Right.
And I don't know if there's a terrible sense of urgency with either one. But,
It is.
Okay.
That's what I just did.
Yeah, busy. It's just a city, there's been just so much activity. But we're staying on top of it. The tonight's agenda, we have, a lot on the agenda as far as increasing rates and annexations and ordinances and the budget is a big one, so look forward to getting that behind us. There was a Cheers team sponsorship request that came into the city of your mailboxes, and they asked if there's action on that. Let me know if you want to talk about that. So the boat is here finally. It's down at the mill site. I actually met the boat the other night at Monday night at around 8 o'clock, and right at the time that Little League was letting out, so we're trying to get the boat down the road with about many cars just could park on Castor Road, get the gate open, they're blocking the gate and everything. We had to wait, and everybody all kind of left at once. We got the boat back there.
You were able to make it through that?
No, we waited.
Okay.
Yeah, down there, the gates were blocked, and it's really big.
Yeah.
But looking forward to getting that in the water. I
Does the
do.
boat have a name?
Osprey something.
The Eagle Osprey is it's
Huh?
US Coast Guard name.
Eagle Osprey. It's redundant.
Yeah.
Very insulted.
Yeah, just in case people didn't know an Osprey was an eagle.
The name?
I don't know. Who named it? It came with that name.
You have a US Coast Guard registered vessel that has a name. There's a process you can go through to rename it, but we were just like, just get the boat here. And
Well, we got eagles, we got
For the
osprey.
record, it has been approved by the US Coast Guard.
yes.
Yes.
It's
all-
That- Well, that it wasn't approved, so.
So there, and there is a zonal certification that needs to happen. There's different geographical bodies of
For
water.
our area, has it been?
Has one for in the waters. It's approved for inland waters, has a occupancy limit, and it has everything it needs, and it just gets recertified. They come out and do it. That is all in process. I think Tina's on. 4th of July, you should see Crystal's working on the agenda for the day of all the activities. Parking is going to be a nightmare. We just talked about doing some controls to try to keep people from coming down Cowlitz, and I think that's a great idea. But we're going to do the best we can with this construction. Last night we had a meeting over at Wild Current. It was really well attended. About 46 people came in and heard about all the construction and progress and challenges. Not going to sugarcoat it that this construction is going to have impacts to business and business to residents. Parking is going to be a real problem. We're trying to find solutions. We're working, with the contractors, trying to meet their schedule. And they're sensitive to, trying to keep things open as long as they can to get in and get out and get back open. But Then the county has John Gum going, and there's all kinds of construction related to that has impacts, so. When it's done, it's gonna be great.
Is there any guy working on the county stuff too?
No.
Okay.
Contractors.
Sure.
Probably talk about 13 nights, last weekend. Or last week's event was. I don't know, Tina, if you want to come up and talk about some of the thoughts about that. There's plenty of social media, negative social media about people fighting and right out or wrong, but. Something's changed. There's always been youth and as part of 13 nights, and activities for them to do, and they kind of drift around, and if you try to define the area and they just kind of seem to gravitate outside the area and they're kind of challenging.
Yeah, I think we've called the police 4 times in the last 2 years. With last night, well, last week being one of them. And it's kind of been an ongoing issue. We discussed this last year. We had a couple of assaults that were outside of our fenced area last year. I remember Molly coming in and talking about that. But, you know, I've been talking with Chief Greenway, and he is confident that unless there's an emergency, he can have a couple of officers that are down here patrolling at least throughout the evening, which will be a huge help, because when that used to happen, we did not have the situations like we have now. Although I have to say the youth are more aggressive and possibly violent than I've ever seen them before. You know, watching them over 8 years now, it's like, I don't think social media has done us a good turn when it comes to examples of what you should do online, playing games, and I just think it makes it more easier to, you know, pretend that you're a warrior or you're watching something and you want more attention. And there's a lot of attention seekers. I know the mayor was down. And I was like, oh my God.
Go into one event.
Yeah.
There were a couple actually, so yeah.
Yeah, and it's really hard to control that because you don't want to yourself break the law while you're trying to manage, you know, people that are actively inciting other people. Like there's a lot of kids that come down that aren't perpetrators at all. They're not fighting, but they're de-individualized and they become part of a pack and they run around and they do like.
They feed off one another.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of bad behavior. Yeah. We had some vendors booths that were damaged, and essentially what we've decided to do is to charge a small fee to, you know, as a penalty. So every time they come in, once they have their wristband broken, they're gonna have to pay to come in again. I think that will be a big deterrent to them not coming into the area expecting to do the things on the list that we've said they can no longer do, like throw firecrackers into the crowd, like taking the shingles off of the roof of the bathroom, climbing on the roof, jamming stuff in them, breaking trees down. They just get into, you know, situations that they would probably never do if their parents were around. So although we said it was 5 and under was free, I want to make it 11 and under are free, because most of the kids that are down there that are not acting appropriately would probably be teenagers, you know, probably 13 and above. So I just want to raise that up a little bit. And, you know, maybe people can earn the ability to not pay, because we know who's the rebel rousers and who isn't, but that might be discrimination. So I don't really want to do that, but I feel like we can find a way where it doesn't have to be a fee for people to get in. This could be a way for us to just stop it in its tracks, because we don't want this to happen again. And of course, the video went by, I'm sure it went viral around town. There's, you know, multiple people that have cameras.
There was a video.
I've seen it like 10 times from different perspectives.
Okay, and that's the thing is,
Yeah.
video can also be catch what it only catches, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, definitely, I got a call from the school district.
Yeah.
They are,
Started at school.
yeah, you know, I mean, they're concerned, you know, it appeared that maybe it might not have been actually the high school, but they were of the age, so it was not even here nor there. It was just like, you know, what we do better, you know, and I think even some of the adults should act a little bit better in situations and handling situations and trying to explain to kids
Yeah.
why their behavior is inappropriate.
And maybe it will come to a point where, you know, we just ask, when you're coming through the gate, you have to come with a parent. So at least we would have a parent there that could potentially supervise their child. Although the one parent that said they would supervise their child took the child and then let the child go 5 minutes later back into the same circumstance. So you know, it's all over the map. There's not, I think there's not a clear solution for every family. And there's families that go down there and they have a great time and the kids act appropriately. And I don't want the families that are there to enjoy a concert and a community event and kind of hang out with their friends to become, you know, these villains of the community either. So I think that if we just put some things in place, which is very thankful that the police are going to be there, and unless there's an emergency, that creates a presence of no loitering being like our biggest problem. I think loitering is our biggest problem because they all just group together and then it starts with, you know, someone said something, someone did something, and then it's, you know, just kind of on fire from there. So.
Can I weigh in too?
Yeah,
So, a couple things. First, I agree, rumor mill, misinformation. I want to give him perspective for new council, and this has kind of been passed on to me about 13 nights. And to Tina's credit, we're kind of a victim of Tina's success. All right. So what I mean by that is that when I first arrived in 2018, Halloween Town, I'll use Halloween Town for example. It was one big weekend. We had a instant command post and everything. Well, we continue to kind of, you know, it grows and grows, which is great for our community, but it's a challenge for, you know, public safety aspect. But if we back up a little bit, just to address an issue is, you know, I get asked, well, we used to have officers at 13 nights. What happened? Well, I can tell you that Lieutenant Hogue has been here 25 years, very well respected. He ran the reserve program, and all those officers that worked 13 nights were reserve officers. And over the years, we've either hired them or gone away. And if you recall, in one of our reports to council, we explained it. Hey, we actually partnered with Hillsborough Police Department last year, Lieutenant Hogue, to run a reserve academy. And between both agencies, we had one applicant. Yeah. So you can imagine that we went from hundreds of police officer applicants. Now we get 20 at a pop. So, and that's for paid. So we're really struggling with that. But that notwithstanding, we have to look at this as a city in a short-term solution for these events, but also a long-term sustainable plan. So my whole point is our population since 2012 has exploded, okay? The police work, and John and I talked about this yesterday or the day before. Something happened in our nation in 2020 that emboldened people to act that what we all grew up with that was unacceptable, but that Tina experiences that, you know, this last Thursday. Nobody expected this. We were business as usual. Call us if you need us. We're handling calls in the city, and it kind of exploded, which was good. That, you know, and I'm not trying to discount what occurred. It's unacceptable behavior that puts a black eye on this event in our community. However, I also am thankful that that's all that happened. Okay, so last night you've seen in Virginia, there was a shooting at a high school graduation. So my point in this long-term plan is that absolutely we can have officers down there, but please know we have 2 officers working on our swing shift hours, and 13 nights is in the middle of June, and our call volume goes up in the summer for those 2 officers. Just last night alone, those 2 officers in a 10-hour shift handled close to 30 911 calls. 30. Okay. One was a child porn on about 2 days ago. John, you seen this? Another fentanyl overdose with swing shift officers, gave CPR and administered Narcan. So I don't want the public to think that they're just us versus them police brutality. We have to prioritize the little resources we have. And this is not a plight about we don't have enough staff. We get it. But what is occurring is our population is increasing. Our events, we're victim of a success. And yet we're just have to kind of figure out how we're going to do this. So I say long-term plan. We have a chance now to kind of look at our special use permits as a whole and see if there's stuff we can improve on. And this is just discussion matter. Do we create an ordinance that mandates certain things for event, people that have special events, to have porta potties, to have security officers? Tina does a great job, E2C, but she's not the only person that's having these events. And do we look at an ordinance, the city council, of a special use permit, having a set of rules that gives the officers some teeth to say, because again, yes, E2C 13 nights, great. Tina's on her game, but what about these other events where we get some unruly? How do we work through that? So at least a chance to bring us to a table to discuss this, because if it's predictable, it's preventable. And I gotta tell you, it really pains myself and these officers when we have special events in our city and we can't participate because we just don't have the staffing. And John and I talked about this. We have a Kiwanis parade that we're not able to staff. I can't commit officers to a parade, 2 officers to say, hey, we'll help on the parade. They get a 911 call and have to leave to respond. And does the parade just wait till they come back? So of course, the sheriff's office, not disparaging them, but to be honest, the sheriff's office runs 2 shifts, day shift and swing shift. We have to staff 3. So it really hinders our ability. So we need to look at this as a city leadership team, as a long-term sustainable plan, whatever that is. And so I think this is an opportunity to kind of better ourselves as a city moving forward. Because I can tell you this, the events are going to grow. We're going to continue. And it was evident in the last Halloween parade, when we had over 13,000 people for this parade in town and pumpkin lighting and 2 officers. And let that sit in for a second, okay? The national industry for law enforcement is to have 2 officers for every 500 people. If you have a gathering of 500 people, you need 2 officers. If you sell alcohol, double the amount of officers. And I lived in that world. And I was, so I'm not going to go down that road, but I'm saying we have to start getting proactive on these events and brainstorming how we can keep our community safe, have these events, but keep our citizens safe. But I just want to make it clear that the St. Helens Police Department is committed. These officers, I spoke to them both personally today. They understand that the issue at hand. Everybody in the police department knows, they've seen the video, and they're sickened by it. They truly are. But again, we have to prioritize. So we have to, after this is over and 13 nights, we have to maybe reconvene and figure out how we can better do this as a city. And I think that we're able to do that. So that's all I got. I hope I didn't get on a soapbox. We will have officers there tomorrow. But make no mistake, if they get called out for something, a fentanyl overdose, but they also understand to come back. So they get it. The 2 officers live in this community. So they're part of this community. And so anyway, again, I apologize if I misspoke, but I appreciate Tina. We had some hot sidebar hallway conversations, bouncing some stuff off each other. And I have no doubt that the changes that were made will make an impact for the betterment of our community tomorrow.
And I think that's great. I've seen that conversation. I know I got a phone call from her the next morning before anybody else. What do you think about $2 fee? It's one thing I can think of. She obviously is up on my feet about 8 o'clock in the morning. She's like, I don't want to, but that would help me try to at least corral where you can come in and where you have to stay out of with that. And if they want to pay the $2, I can cut the bracelet, and if they happen to get back in, they pay another $2 somewhere.
Maybe the second should be 10.
Yes.
$2.
I mean, it's just one way of doing it.
Hopefully it won't last.
Sorry, Mr. Burke, I know you want to say something, but since the last big Halloween parade, and I know that's not an E2C event, but I was pretty scared about something happening at that parade. And I don't get scared very often, but the amount of people in the crowds, and I mean, there would have been no way for even police to handle that. It was pretty over the top. So ever since that, you guys are gonna hear me say it again, and I really, really strongly encourage us as a council to look at private security for our big events. I think that our police are trying to focus on other things going on in the city, but those events need to be secure for families and they need to be secure for your staff and everyone else that is attending these events. So I would like to see us, maybe the fees that we're gonna charge right now go towards security for Halloween Town or something, because we need to have private security.
And she does go, if the fees do go to serve, so.
But CERT's not enough. We need private security.
Right, so these $2 are. So what's being done, what's being done with the $2?
Well, let's see how many $2 we get.
No, how's it being, what's being done with, it? Who does it go to, how's it being accounted?
Maybe it goes to the police. I mean, I don't know.
How-
It's a deterrent. It's not an income stream. That's what-
I'm not asking for, I wanna know if we're getting $2, how is it accounted? What's the custody, where does the money go, how do we account for it?
Okay, it will be tourism income and it will go to help pay for 13 nights, which never operates in the black.
So if it goes to tourism, that means it's coming into, we're talking mostly cash, right? Probably, okay. And so you're collecting that on behalf of E2C or collecting on behalf of the city?
13 nights. That's tourism, the city.
The city.
You own 13
Right,
nights.
I know, okay, I just wanted to make sure. I had heard it said, you say before that you didn't have to account for cash transactions to the city, so I'm just clarifying that's. Okay, that you're accountable and it's, and that is something you said at a previous meeting. It is.
We've had donation boxes up.
Yeah,
Past, those seem some reason to kind of calmer, they don't get very much, I mean.
no.
Yeah.
So $100 maybe or something, but I think the behavior is better then too. A little bit.
Well, part of it is just closing down the entrance and there's one entry point. I mean, that will make a difference.
Teenagers hanging out right there.
Yeah, that's okay if they're outside the area.
Well, if the incident's still gonna happen.
Well, I don't think it will.
You guys, I know teenagers, I was a teen counselor, I'm telling you. You wanna stop the teenagers from going down there, get juvenile probation down there. Have them hanging out, those teenagers aren't gonna be in that area.
We did have an officer at one of the times that came down and we had everybody go outside and they kind of didn't misbehave then. It was kind of interesting. I'm like, oh, they like to be in that vendor area. Showing off. They don't like to do it out here where there's no one watching. It's really, it's kind of an odd.
Can you do it as a
phenomenon.
suggested donation tomorrow because it's such early notice or?
No,
start?
because it's only for those kids, right? I mean, the only reason we're doing it is to try to deter those kids.
What happens if they all pay for a bracelet and come in?
That's good. No, we want them to come. We just don't want them to leave, because if they leave, that means we have to cut their wristband and they're misbehaving. Yeah,
I'm just nervous about all of this. I understand why you came up with it and I think it's the best that you can do at this moment, but I really, again, strongly
Let's go back.
encourage to research and look at private security for our big events.
Yeah, but we can always go back. I think it's more about. Let's see how it goes tomorrow.
yeah.
Let's see how it goes tomorrow. Let's see
Yeah,
our
only
future
we're
trips,
just,
all we
you know,
wish.
yeah.
We're just finally starting, let's just see how.
And I think the parents are a lot more aware than they were a month ago about behavior of their own children
Well, I've
too.
heard from parents firsthand that are upset too,
Yeah, for sure.
with staff members down there. So I think we're gonna see a lot of different sides come out. That aren't gonna be very pretty.
Well, that's.
Well, I'm the only staff, so everybody else is volunteers besides Chris.
Vendors.
Oh, vendors, yeah. I mean, vendors aren't my staff.
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
Yeah. We only have volunteers and I guess the vendor staff, yeah. And I did have someone call and say they wanted to volunteer that had been there and saw it. And they're like, I would like to volunteer because my kids like coming down here. I'm like, excellent. I would love to have you volunteer.
I think everybody agrees it's a great family event that should continue to stay free.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't have the unruly youth ruin a good situation, but you have that happen. And it's not just the youth, there was some adults that had some behaviors
Yeah,
that
it
were
was not great.
up to snuff either, right?
Yeah.
Say that.
So, yeah, so what is chief, watching the video and, what's the advice to volunteers, citizens, who are not trained public
You
safety?
can witness.
But not witnessing, but involving themselves in.
I would actually, it's very
Touching
Just call.
participants.
absolutely hands off, don't get involved, don't, and be a good witness, call 911. Because what we do is that there's a link system. If they're somehow volunteer for the city, now we put, it's just bad all the way around because we don't know, it's a bad idea and it puts them in harm's way. And then there's a lot of other things that happen, in to the points been mentioned, different videos and everything. So absolutely hands off, call the police. Hopefully to the mayor's point, tomorrow night is smooth to everybody's, we all agree on this. And then we build from there. But again, I just don't want this discussion to fall to the wayside because we have events that are continually coming with ETC not even involved in them. We have to come up with something, to improve on what we have now, I believe, so.
All right, it's 5 o'clock. I know you have more to report than that.
Yeah, no, I do. Are we calling it an entry fee? Is it a cover
It's
charge?
an entry fee, yeah. You're inside a permitted area. The permitted area is defined. And if you're in the permitted area, that gives us the ability to say, just like if you're at a concert anywhere in the United States in a building and you got into a fist fight, those security officers could remove you physically and you're not coming back in.
The rules that
So we
came
would,
up to exclude people are.
under 11 is free. Okay, and
Behaviors that are, what,
okay, we have a list of behaviors that we would like for them not to do. And as long as they behave properly, they're not going to be asked. to
It looked like
leave
cussing,
and-
fighting, even play fighting, slapping, no wheel objects, all that, yes, it's, everybody's seen it, it's been all over Facebook.
Yeah.
It should be covered. Should be covered, John.
850 comments later, responding to every one of them.
It was nothing unreasonable.
I'm very request the executive session get moved to this evening.
We have a public hearing too.
Right.
Yeah, will we have, yes, will we have Bill available for them?
Ask him.
Hard to project that time, I'm not gonna ask him.
So when do you need me?
Well, Bill, could be as soon as probably 7:30 if you came in.
Sure, I think the Nugget Heat game ought to be about over by then, so sure.
Basketball fan.
Yeah, I'm looking at the evening agenda. We have the St. Helens School Choir and Band programs coming. Or no, they're proclamation, but I think they are coming in. And then there's gonna be probably quite a few visitor comments because we have a lot on here. So, yeah, 7:30, maybe the fastest if you can be here, because one time we thought we were gonna need it, like about 8. And we sat here and twiddled our thumbs for 25 minutes.
Okay.
So it's probably gonna be 8 though.
Yeah, more than likely gonna be later than 7:30, but if you came in around then and started listening.
Okay, I'll come in at 7:30. I'll do the same thing. I'll mute myself and not turn on the video. Does that sound okay?
Yep,
Right, 7:30 it is.
yep, okay, go ahead.
All right, just real quick, I think we all know about the Columbia View stage and just more of a shout out anything to Public Works for getting on that, and making it happen. Pivoted, it's still on the grass, the roof is now off, it's gone. There's a new floor deck on it, a handrail that goes around it, and it'll do for now until we go to. So that doing that's under construction next fall, but the gateway feature at First and St. Helens Street, we've seen some rendering additions that the working committee, steering committee with that is looking at a couple different designs.
Fine.
All right, I'll let you know.
No, go ahead. It's okay.
No. we're looking at either it's some sort of an arch feature or some kind of a something on each side that's kind of landmarky. And some different themes there, but it's getting narrowed down to a couple of options. The sewer basin projects, we got confirmation from DEQ that our plan to take the one loan and turn it into three. Get $500,000 savings for each of those projects is approved by DEQ, and the loans, but the concept of applying for them. Also, the community development block grant for $2.5 million that we're going to get the priority sewer basin projects is underway. It'll be administered through Business Oregon. The application's coming due. We're being encouraged to apply because it's really highly likely to get funded because it relates to housing. Pittsburgh removed reservoir project is now out for advertisement. We are not fixing the reservoir. We are rebuilding the reservoir. Our contractor design and build that reservoir, and if Mr. Tomlins is out there, we are publicly announcing that we are building a new reservoir. Okay, if you're out there, we're not fixing the old one. And also the Central Waterfront project, we're meeting with DEQ to check in and report back on where we're at the project.
Yeah, so that brings me to this. I just want to read this because it was brought up earlier that it states this. But rather a time for us to listen to you. Our city administrator and city recorder are taking notes of action if needed. They're not keeping a records of your entire speech and public comment. That's the way it reads here, and then it says, thank you for participating. So I just want to make that clear. As his remarks earlier, that it does not say that here, that we're keeping record of it.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Kathy wanted to talk about the janitorial contract real quick.
For several years, we've had a contract for quite a while. Yeah, you all received the action sheet.
Yep.
The timeline was cut a little short because I was absent for a little while.
Yep.
And so we stay on the timeline and get this contract in place by July 1st. We need to get approval so we can notify the parties. But anyways, our janitorial services have been less than what we would be expecting. So we went out for an RFP and we got 2 bids, and we had a staff interview or a staff review committee that reviewed all the bids. And we all unanimously chose EcoBright. And so we want to move forward with awarding the contract to them and authorizing John to sign it.
Shouldn't be an issue. We'll get that on tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, Bill, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up, even with people here, because we're gonna just recess it. I'm gonna go ahead and open our executive session because it's on this work session for the day. Is that correct? And then recess it for tonight?
That is correct, Mayor. That's correct.
Okay. All right, want to make sure. Okay, and everybody can stay here because I'm just gonna recess it. So today is Wednesday, June 7th, 5:07 p.m. We are now in executive session under ORS 192.6602E. Or 2E and 2H. Other than labor negotiation, consultations, representatives of the news media, designated staff, and other persons as approved shall be allowed to attend executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the council chambers. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. Any person in attendance, including the news media, who has a recording device is directed to turn it off at once. Members of the city council president are Council President Chilton, Councilor Gunderson, Councilor Berkeley. Sundin's not here, right?
Yes, he's still there.
Okay, okay, Councilor Sundin and myself, Mayor Scholl. And so now I'm going to. The time is now 5:09 p.m. We are going to recess this executive session until roughly
No
set 7:30.
no sooner than.
Yeah, no sooner than 7:30 tonight. All right.
All the public hearing
Go
at
eat.
7 o'clock. Start the landing.
It is now, but.
All public hearing.
No, a little bit before, 6:30.
6:30, it is 6, okay.
It is 6:30, 6:45. 6:45.
6:45.
Yeah, it's up.